Yuji Itadori's journey is one of transformation, both emotionally and psychologically. He begins as a seemingly ordinary high school student, but his life is radically altered when he becomes the vessel for Ryomen Sukuna, the most dangerous curse in existence. At his core, Yuji is a kind-hearted person who deeply believes in helping others, driven by the simple philosophy his dying grandfather instilled in him: always help people. This belief shapes every decision he makes and becomes both his greatest strength and his deepest source of conflict as he navigates a world filled with death, curses, and moral ambiguity. When Yuji first swallows Sukuna's cursed finger, he is thrown into a chaotic and violent world where curses wreak havoc on human lives. Despite the gravity of this situation, Yuji remains committed to his belief in saving people. His empathy and sense of justice are clear from the start. He wants to help people, even those he doesn't know well, and he is horrified by the idea of death being meaningless. This desire to make sure that every death means something is what drives him to join the world of Jujutsu sorcery, despite the dangers and the harsh reality he must now face. Yuji's relationships play a crucial role in shaping him throughout the series. His connection with Gojo Satoru, his mentor, is complex but foundational. Gojo sees potential in Yuji, but also recognizes the risks of having Sukuna within him. Gojo's confidence and strength are comforting to Yuji, but they also highlight the vast gap between them, both in power and in understanding the darker aspects of being a sorcerer. While Gojo is supportive and protective of Yuji, his somewhat carefree attitude towards life and death clashes with Yuji's deep-seated fear of losing people he cares about. Yuji's friendship with Megumi Fushiguro and Nobara Kugisaki becomes one of the most important aspects of his journey. Megumi, who is more reserved and introspective, offers Yuji a contrasting perspective. While Yuji is driven by his desire to help everyone, Megumi understands that not all lives can be saved, and that some sacrifices must be made. Their friendship grows from this shared struggle, and over time, Megumi becomes someone who helps ground Yuji when his emotions threaten to overwhelm him. Megumi's quiet strength and moral complexity push Yuji to think more deeply about the meaning of life, death, and sacrifice. Nobara, on the other hand, shares Yuji's fiery spirit but expresses it differently. She's bold, confident, and unafraid to speak her mind. Together, Yuji, Megumi, and Nobara form a close-knit team that feels like family. Their bond is forged in the heat of battle, where they face death and danger together. And it gives Yuji a sense of belonging and purpose. The trust they build strengthens Yuji's resolve, making him even more determined to protect his friends and do what is right, even when the path ahead seems impossible. Yuji's encounters with Mahito, however, represent a turning point in his life. Mahito, a curse who delights in manipulating human souls, embodies everything Yuji despises. He views human life as insignificant, something to be toyed with and discarded. This nihilistic view directly opposes Yuji's belief that every life matters. Yuji's first clash with Mahito is not just a physical battle, but an ideological one, forcing Yuji to confront the brutal reality that some beings, like Mahito, find joy in cruelty and suffering. When Mahito kills Junpei, a boy Yuji had befriended and desperately tried to save, Yuji experiences an emotional breakdown. This moment is pivotal because it shatters Yuji's innocence. For the first time, he truly understands that no matter how hard he tries, there will be times when he cannot save the people he cares about. Junpei's death is a harsh lesson that shakes Yuji to his core. He is consumed by guilt, feeling that he has failed as both a sorcerer and a person. This marks the beginning of a more mature Yuji, one who understands the weight of death but refuses to let it destroy his sense of justice. The presence of Sukuna within Yuji further complicates his internal struggle. Sukuna is a malevolent curse who lives inside Yuji's body, waiting for moments to seize control. Their relationship is antagonistic, with Sukuna often taking advantage of Yuji's vulnerabilities to torment him. The most painful example of this is when Sukuna uses Yuji's body to commit atrocities, such as the massacre during the Shibuya incident. Yuji is forced to watch, helpless, as Sukuna murders innocent people using his own hands. This experience leaves Yuji devastated. He feels deep shame and sorrow, believing that even though Sukuna was in control, the blood is on his hands. This battle between Yuji and Sukuna represents the larger conflict within Yuji's soul. On one side, he is the boy who wants to save everyone, who believes in the value of life. On the other, Sukuna symbolizes the darker, more destructive aspects of humanity, the selfishness and cruelty that exist within all people. Yuji's challenge is to not only resist Sukuna's influence, but also to accept that this darkness is something he must live with, without letting it define him. As Yuji's journey progresses, he is forced to confront the complexity of his own philosophy. He realizes that his grandfather's simple words, "help people," aren't always easy to follow. The world of jujutsu sorcery is filled with moral gray areas, where right and wrong aren't always clear. Yuji learns that he cannot save everyone, and that sometimes the people he loves will be taken from him. This is a painful truth that he struggles to accept, but it also makes him stronger. Rather than becoming cynical or losing hope, Yuji grows more resilient. He understands that while he may not be able to save everyone, the fight itself, the effort to protect even one person, is worth it. By the end of his journey, Yuji has changed. He is no longer the naive boy who believed in simple heroism. He has faced unimaginable losses, battled powerful curses, and confronted the darkest parts of himself. But through it all, he remains committed to his core belief in helping others. The pain and suffering he has endured have made him wiser, but they have not broken him. Yuji accepts that he cannot control everything, especially Sukuna, but he also refuses to give in to despair. He continues to fight, not because he believes he can save everyone, but because it is the right thing to do. Yuji Itadori's story is one of resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. His growth is a testament to the strength of human will and the power of compassion, even in a world filled with darkness. While he carries the weight of Sukuna and the losses he has endured, Yuji's heart remains steadfast. He may have changed, but his desire to help others has only deepened, giving his life purpose amidst the chaos. Toji Fushiguro, one of the most enigmatic characters in Jujutsu Kaisen, stands out as a figure whose life defies the expectations and norms of the Jujutsu world. Born into the prestigious Zenin family, Toji was immediately cast aside due to his lack of cursed energy, a trait that, in his family's eyes, marked him as worthless. Yet, rather than accepting this fate, Toji became a man who would carve out his own path, one that revolved around raw survival, rebellion, and a harsh, detached outlook on life. Growing up in a family that valued strength and sorcery, Toji's lack of cursed energy turned him into an outcast. In the eyes of the Zenin clan, cursed energy was synonymous with power and status, and anyone without it was seen as lesser. However, this rejection didn't break Toji. Instead, it shaped him into a man who rejected the very systems that tried to define him. His decision to leave the Zenin clan behind and become a freelance assassin, hunting sorcerers for hire, was his ultimate rejection of the world that tried to cage him. Toji's mindset, built on the foundation of survival, shaped everything he did. He honed his body and mind to compensate for his lack of cursed energy, turning his physical abilities into his greatest weapon. Toji trained relentlessly, developing a nearly unmatched level of strength, agility, and skill with cursed tools. His ability to hide his presence from sorcerers, to fight them on their own terms and win, was not just a reflection of his physical capabilities, it was a testament to his intelligence and cold, calculating nature. The essence of Toji's character lies in his pragmatism. He didn't care about honor, family, or morality. He cared about surviving on his own terms. His philosophy was simple. Power, for him, wasn't about cursed energy or lineage, but about freedom, the ability to live without being controlled or bound by societal expectations. This philosophy is most evident in his infamous battle with Satoru Gojo, one of the strongest sorcerers in the Jujutsu Kaisen universe. Toji, who had no cursed energy to rely on, managed to nearly kill Gojo, an accomplishment that shocked even the most powerful figures in the Jujutsu world. Armed with the inverted spear of heaven, a cursed tool that could neutralize cursed techniques, and relying on his superior instincts, Toji showed that raw skill and intelligence could trump the immense powers that the Jujutsu world worshipped. But Toji's victory over Gojo was short-lived. Gojo's eventual recovery and defeat of Toji was symbolic of the larger forces at play. Despite his personal strength and independence, Toji could not fully escape the grip of the system he despised. He was, in many ways, a man fighting against the tide of fate, and while he nearly changed the course of that tide, he ultimately succumbed to it. His defeat at Gojo's hands felt like the universe's way of reinforcing the dominance of cursed energy and the traditional structures of power in the Jujutsu world. Toji's relationships with others were shaped by his deeply rooted detachment and pragmatism. This is especially clear in how he treated his own son, Megumi Fushiguro. Toji abandoned Megumi at a young age, selling him to the very Zenin family that he himself had rejected. While this action could be seen as heartless, it also reflects Toji's twisted form of care. He knew that Megumi had potential as a sorcerer, and by selling him to the Zenin clan, Toji ensured that his son would be taken care of in a world that valued cursed energy above all else. Toji didn't show his love through affection or presence. He showed it in the only way he knew how, by ensuring Megumi would survive and thrive in the cruel world he had once rejected. In his final moments, Toji revealed a glimpse of his buried humanity. After his fatal defeat by Gojo, he asked about Megumi, expressing interest in his son's future for the first time. This brief, subtle moment hints at the depth of Toji's character. He was not simply a cold-hearted killer. Beneath the layers of detachment and cynicism was a man who, in his own way, cared about the legacy he left behind. It's as if, in the face of death, Toji finally allowed himself to acknowledge the bond he had severed with his son, revealing the conflict between his desire for freedom and the ties of fate that continued to bind him. Toji's psychology is shaped by this constant tension between freedom and fate. He spent his life rejecting the structures that had discarded him, but he couldn't fully escape their influence. His decision to abandon Megumi while still securing his future in the Zenin clan is a perfect example of this paradox. In rejecting the Zenin family, Toji claimed his freedom, yet in selling his son to them, he indirectly bound Megumi to the very world he had sought to escape. This contradiction speaks to the deeper tragedy of Toji's character. He wanted to transcend the limitations of fate, but he was always aware of the ways in which he remained trapped by it. Toji's philosophy, centered on survival and rejecting the expectations of society, is a reflection of his life experience. He never aspired to change the world or to fight for a higher purpose. His rebellion against the Jujutsu world was not about morality. It was about asserting his independence. proving that he could live on his own terms despite the limitations he was born with. Yet, despite his strength, Toji's life is also a reminder of the limits of this rebellion. He may have come close to defeating the strongest sorcerer, but in the end, he couldn't fully break free from the structures that had shaped his life. In conclusion, Toji Fushiguro is a character who embodies the complexity of human nature. He is both a rebel and a product of the very system he despised. His life, filled with cold pragmatism, survival, and rejection, paints him as a man hardened by the world around him. Yet, beneath this exterior lies a figure touched by tragedy, someone who cared about his son's future, but couldn't bring himself to express it in traditional ways. Toji's story is one of rebellion against fate, but also of the limits of that rebellion. His strength, while immense, could not completely free him from the forces that shaped his life, leaving behind a legacy of conflict, power, and unspoken care.
Mahito is easily one of the most repugnant, detestable, and vile characters I've ever encountered, not just in Jujutsu Kaisen or shonen anime, but in fiction as a whole. His cruelty is completely unnecessary, and he revels in bloodshed with a sadistic glee. What stands out most to me is how much he delights in carnage, making him even more loathsome than other chaotic characters like Suguru Geto or Sukuna, who also thrive in chaos but without the same personal malice. Mahito's twisted sense of joy, combined with his mocking, childlike demeanor as he commits his atrocities, makes him uniquely hateful. He's the type of character who would dance in a rain of blood while singing nursery rhymes to mock the innocent lives he's taken, showing that there are no depths he won't sink to. Yet, despite how unlikable he is, Mahito is a brilliantly written character who significantly enhances the narrative. His role in Jujutsu Kaisen masterfully balances this repulsiveness with a deep, intimate opposition to everything Yuji stands for. This contrast sheds light on the story's themes, particularly those related to curses, the despair inherent in the setting, and, ironically, humanity itself. As a special grade-cursed spirit, Mahito embodies the darkest aspects of humanity: cruelty, violence, malice, sadism, and hatred, distilled into a single being. He is the personification of humanity's seeping negative emotions and thoughts, making him an extreme example of these traits. His desire to annihilate humanity in favor of cursed spirits is driven by his familiarity with human darkness, which he uses to justify his actions. Mahito exists because of human negativity, yet he despises them, using the life they unintentionally gave him to try and destroy them. Interestingly, Mahito doesn't act out of aversion or disgust for human flaws, but rather because he is a product of those very flaws. His horrific actions mirror the worst of humanity because he is made from its darkest parts. He wants to eliminate humans, yet they are the source of his existence. A paradox he's fully aware of, but doesn't let deter him. Instead, he embraces it with a childlike glee, viewing humanity's pitiful nature as a reason they don't deserve to live. His disdain for his own life reflects his belief that he has no real value beyond serving the cause of cursed spirits. Mahito's fixation on the abstract concept of life, particularly the soul, is a core aspect of his character. Rather than focusing on the physical world, he's obsessed with the soul's nature, finding value in learning about and experimenting with it. His ability, Idol Transfiguration, allows him to manipulate the physical bodies of others by altering their souls, reinforcing his belief that the soul is the most crucial part of an individual. This obsession with the soul might also explain his sadistic desire to manipulate others, as he's deeply interested in how negative emotions can reshape the soul. Yuji Itadori becomes Mahito's primary target, more so than any other character. While Junpei was almost a trial run, Yuji is where Mahito fully indulges in his role, poking and provoking him, trying to break his spirit by forcing him to experience devastating loss repeatedly. Mahito's goal is to drag Yuji down to the darkest depths, to prove that, at their core, they are no different. This twisted mirroring of humanity's darkness makes Mahito one of the most honest characters in Jujutsu Kaisen. He doesn't hide who he is or the nature of his existence. Instead, he tries to reveal what he believes is the truth about humanity through his manipulations. Mahito's obsession with making Yuji suffer is incredibly personal. He fixates on Yuji, seeing him as the ultimate representation of the humanity he despises. Mahito is relentless in his mission to make Yuji miserable, seeking him out at every opportunity. Despite this intense focus, Mahito claims that he will eventually forget Yuji, which seems contradictory given the depth of his obsession. However, this statement may reflect a fundamental aspect of human nature: the tendency to commit atrocities and then move on to the next target, never fully satisfied, always seeking more cruelty. Mahito embodies the indiscriminate cruelty and casual malice of the world in Jujutsu Kaisen. He represents the ugly side of humanity, born from its darkest emotions, acting as the worst humans do, and ultimately dying like a human. His hatred for humanity is a testament to how deeply human he actually is. Mahito's life, actions, and death all highlight the futility and randomness of existence in the series, emphasizing that there is no grand meaning to life or death. Curses are created, they cause destruction, and then they are defeated. Despite claiming to be indifferent to his own life, Mahito's actions in his final moments reveal a deep-seated fear of death, one that is all too human. His hypocrisy and lack of perspective in those moments only serve to underscore his humanity further. Throughout his time in the story, Mahito remains one of the most unapologetically human characters, shaped by human darkness, acting out the worst of human tendencies, and dying in a very human way. Yuji, on the other hand, is depicted as the most human character in Jujutsu Kaisen. He struggles, he is flawed, but he perseveres, representing the best of humanity. Mahito and Yuji are like two sides of the same coin, each embodying different aspects of humanity. Yuji, the light and perseverance; Mahito, the darkness and malice. This dynamic is central to the story, with both characters representing different facets of what it means to be human. In the end, Mahito's inability to grow or change, his failure to break free from the chains of his existence, makes him a stepping stone for Yuji's development. While Mahito embodies the worst of humanity, Yuji represents the potential for growth and improvement. The contrast between them highlights why Yuji is more than Mahito, even though both are inextricably linked by their shared humanity. Mahito's ultimate realization that he is not so different from the humans he despises only adds to the tragedy of his character. He thought his life had no value, yet in his final moments, he clung to it desperately, revealing just how human he truly was. This realization that he is an inextricable part of humanity, despite his hatred for it, is what makes him one of the most human characters in the series. And while Mahito may eventually forget Yuji, it's unlikely that Yuji will ever forget Mahito, as the lessons learned through their conflict will stay with him forever, shaping his understanding of the world, humanity, and himself.
Subaru Natsuki, the protagonist of Re:Zero, faces a unique kind of loneliness. From the moment he is transported to a new world, he is burdened with an unimaginable power. Every time he dies, he comes back to life, resetting time to a specific point, but only he remembers what happened. At first glance, this might seem like a gift, the ability to cheat death and undo mistakes. But the reality of Subaru's situation is far more tragic. Each death takes a heavy toll on him, and the loneliness he feels grows deeper with each reset. One of the biggest sources of Subaru's loneliness is his inability to share his experiences with anyone. He cannot talk about his power, return by death, without being stopped by a mysterious force. This means that every time he dies, every time he watches the people he cares about suffer or perish, only he remembers. Imagine watching your friends die in horrific ways, trying to save them, but failing over and over, each time starting back at square one. It would break anyone down, and Subaru is no exception. He carries the weight of all those deaths alone, and no one can truly understand what he's been through, because, for them, none of it ever happened. Subaru's choices are another source of his pain. He tries so hard to protect the people around him, but no matter what he does, it often feels like it's not enough. Each time he makes a decision that leads to a bad outcome, it gnaws at him. He starts to doubt himself, wondering if he's capable of making the right choices at all. Should he be doing something different? Should he approach people in a different way? Every time he returns by death, he is forced to reconsider everything. Over time, this constant cycle of failure and reset makes him question his own judgment and abilities, leaving him mentally and emotionally exhausted. The worst part of Subaru's power is the endless parade of death that he must witness. People he grows to care about, Amelia, Rem, Rom, and others, die horrible deaths in front of him, and each time he fails to save them, it eats away at him. He wants so badly to protect them, but no matter how hard he tries, he often watches them die again and again. Watching someone you love die even once is devastating. Seeing it happen repeatedly, knowing you're powerless to stop it, is soul-crushing. The sadness builds up, and Subaru begins to lose hope. It's not just the people around him who die. Each time, a part of Subaru dies too. As Subaru dies and comes back to life over and over, he starts to lose his grip on reality. Dying is not a painless process. It hurts physically and mentally. Every time he experiences a new death, he carries the pain of that moment with him. Over time, the emotional scars pile up. He starts to wonder if any of it is real. Is this world just a cruel nightmare he can never escape? His repeated deaths start to blur the line between life and death, and Subaru begins to lose sight of what's real and what isn't. It's hard to hold on to a sense of purpose or reality when you know that, no matter what, you'll just start over again. This cycle of death and failure creates a deep sense of despair. Subaru begins to hate himself. He feels weak, useless, and incapable of making a difference. His self-doubt overwhelms him. Why can't he save the people he loves? Why does he keep failing? As he spirals deeper into this despair, he feels more isolated from those around him. They can't understand what he's going through, and Subaru starts to believe they'd be better off without him. In his darkest moments, he even considers giving up entirely, disappearing from their lives so he can't hurt them anymore. What makes Subaru's story so powerful is how human his struggles are. We may not have the power to reset time or cheat death, but everyone knows what it feels like to fail, to doubt themselves, and to feel alone. Subaru's journey is not just about fighting monsters or surviving in a fantasy world. It's about overcoming the emotional and mental toll of loneliness, self-doubt, and despair. He has to learn that even when it feels like everything is falling apart, and even when he feels completely alone, he still has the strength to keep going. In the end, the loneliness Subaru faces is not just about being physically alone, it's about the emotional isolation that comes from carrying burdens that no one else can see. His power to return by death may allow him to save others, but it also forces him to bear the weight of every failure, every death, and every trauma. The true struggle for Subaru is not just to survive, but to keep going in the face of all the pain and loneliness that come with his journey. And that, more than anything, is what makes his story so sad and so deeply relatable. Smoking Behind the Supermarket with You is a manga that has garnered attention for its unique ability to make an everyday, and even harmful activity, like smoking, appear alluring. Produced by Square Enix and written by Jinushi, this relatively new manga blends slice-of-life simplicity with unexpected depth, creating a compelling narrative that resonates with readers. While the concept may seem mundane, the story, character dynamics, and overarching themes come together in a surprisingly captivating way. At its core, the plot revolves around Sasaki, an overworked salaryman stuck in a cycle of burnout and dissatisfaction. His life lacks joy, and his daily routine feels repetitive and exhausting. However, a small glimmer of happiness enters his life through Yamada, a young woman working at the local supermarket. Sasaki harbors a crush on Yamada, though it is never overtly obsessive or inappropriate. His delight comes merely from seeing her smile, and this simple interaction provides him with fleeting moments of respite from his otherwise bleak existence. The story takes a turn when Sasaki is approached by a character named Tayama, who invites him to smoke behind the supermarket. Sasaki, drained from his work and life, welcomes this opportunity to unwind, and soon the two begin sharing regular smoking breaks together. These moments of quiet reflection and conversation become a central part of the manga, with Tayama offering Sasaki advice and encouragement about his crush on Yamada. Tayama serves as both a confidant and a subtle instigator, nudging Sasaki to be more assertive in his feelings. The twist, which arrives fairly early in the story, is that Tayama is actually Yamada in disguise. This revelation adds an interesting layer to the narrative, akin to the Clark Kent effect, where a simple change in appearance is enough to conceal one's true identity. Yamada's transformation into Tayama involves little more than a change in hairstyle and attire, yet Sasaki is completely oblivious to the connection. This lack of recognition is perhaps a reflection of his deep exhaustion and emotional disconnection from the world around him, underscoring one of the manga's central themes: how burnout can blind us to the obvious and inhibit our ability to connect with others. What makes Smoking Behind the Supermarket with You stand out is not just the plot twist or the romance at its heart, but the way it captures the small, everyday moments of life. The setting is limited to just a few locations, primarily the supermarket and the alleyway where Sasaki and Yamada, share their cigarettes. There is no grand adventure, no high-stakes drama, just quiet conversations and the slow unraveling of emotions. This minimalist approach evokes a calming, almost meditative atmosphere, allowing readers to immerse themselves in the characters' subtle interactions and personal growth. The age gap between Sasaki and Yamada adds another intriguing dynamic to the story. Sasaki, in his 40s, represents the weary, overworked adult, while Yamada, in her mid-20s, brings a youthful energy and a different perspective on life. This contrast in their lifestyles and outlooks emphasizes how they each navigate their respective challenges. While Sasaki is bogged down by the weight of his responsibilities, Yamada, through her dual persona as Tayama, encourages him to break out of the rut he finds himself in. Little by little, Tayama helps Sasaki rediscover small pleasures and possibilities in life that he had long since forgotten. An interesting element of the manga is the duality of Yamada's character. Readers are left wondering whether her true self is closer to the relaxed, easygoing Tayama or the more reserved and professional Yamada. This ambiguity adds to the intrigue, as Sasaki, and by extension the audience, is never quite sure which version of her is the real one. Is Tayama a facade? Or is it the version of Yamada she feels most comfortable presenting? The exploration of these dual identities gives the story an added layer of psychological complexity. Despite its simplicity, the manga also touches on themes of loneliness, burnout, and the human need for connection. Sasaki's interactions with Tayama, Yamada, allow him to express his inner struggles and slowly begin to break free from the mental and emotional cage he has built around himself. These small steps towards self-awareness and change, though understated, form the emotional backbone of the story. What truly makes this manga special, however, is the unexpected allure it gives to something as harmful as smoking. The author takes an unhealthy habit and turns it into a moment of bonding and reflection between the characters. Tayama, in particular, exudes a charm and confidence during these smoking sessions that almost makes the act seem appealing. Of course, the manga does not glorify smoking, but it does create a nostalgic or aesthetic space where it symbolizes relaxation and connection, rather than a purely detrimental activity. For some readers, Tayama's cool, laid-back demeanor during these scenes is enough to make them momentarily forget the harmful reality of smoking, though the story itself does not push readers toward the habit. In conclusion, Smoking Behind the Supermarket with You is a deceptively simple manga that masterfully weaves together themes of burnout, emotional connection, and personal growth. It presents a relatable story of an overworked man finding solace in small daily interactions, while also exploring the duality of identity and the challenges of breaking free from life's routines. Through its slice-of-life charm, relatable writing, and engaging characters, it captivates readers and offers a quiet but meaningful escape from the demands of reality. Ken Kaneki, the protagonist of Tokyo Ghoul, is one of the most complex and psychologically nuanced characters in modern anime. His story is a deep exploration of identity, trauma, and the painful path toward acceptance. From his early days as a shy, bookish boy to becoming a powerful, tormented figure with multiple personas, Kaneki's transformation is both symbolic and tragic. His journey highlights the human struggle to reconcile conflicting parts of oneself, particularly when facing overwhelming changes in circumstances. At the start of the series, we meet Kaneki as an ordinary teenager with black hair, symbolizing his innocence and humanity. His love for books and his kind nature paint him as a typical protagonist with a tragic past, but one who still holds an optimistic view of the world. He has a crush on Rize, a girl he meets at a cafe, but their seemingly innocent encounter becomes a pivotal moment in his life. Rize, secretly a ghoul, attacks Kaneki, leaving him mortally wounded. In an effort to save his life, doctors transplant Rize's organs into Kaneki, unknowingly transforming him into a half-ghoul. This moment sets off Kaneki's internal struggle. How can he reconcile his humanity with his new, monstrous identity as a ghoul? Ghouls are creatures who must eat human flesh to survive, and Kaneki, terrified and repulsed by this, spirals into confusion and fear. His once peaceful world is turned upside down, and he now faces the horrifying reality of needing to consume humans to live. This new version of Kaneki, often referred to as half-ghoul Kaneki, marks the beginning of his emotional and mental transformation. He initially resists his ghoul side, trying to cling to his humanity while battling the primal instincts that now control him. The next critical stage in Kaneki's transformation occurs after he is captured and tortured by Yamori, a sadistic ghoul who pushes him to his breaking point. The torture is not just physical, but psychological, forcing Kaneki to confront the duality within him. His mental anguish manifests in his hair, which gradually turns white, an outward symbol of his internal transformation. This change in hair color is not just a random aesthetic choice. It represents Kaneki's acceptance of his ghoul side, the part of him he had tried so hard to suppress. White-haired Kaneki is a stark departure from the boy he once was. No longer passive and fearful, he becomes colder, more calculating, and willing to do whatever it takes to survive. The cracking of his fingers, a habit he picks up during his torture, becomes a chilling reminder of the psychological scars left behind. Kaneki's shift in personality, from kind and compassionate to ruthless and aggressive, symbolizes the harsh lesson he has learned. In a cruel world, kindness can be a weakness. His decision to leave Anteku, the cafe that had provided him with a sense of belonging, further underscores his isolation and rejection of his former self. However, Kaneki's journey is far from over. In the Tokyo Ghoul arc, Kaneki faces yet another identity shift. After a brutal encounter with the ghoul investigator Arima, Kaneki suffers from amnesia and is given a new identity. Heize Sasaki. With no memory of his past life, Sasaki is a kind-hearted investigator who fights ghouls but feels an unexplained connection to them. His hair, now a mix of white and black, reflects the fragmented nature of his identity. As Sasaki, Kaneki experiences a temporary reset, reverting to a more innocent version of himself, but this peace is short-lived. As his memories of being Kaneki resurface, so does the darkness within him. Sasaki's internal conflict intensifies as he grapples with the knowledge of his past and the realization that he cannot escape who he truly is. The reappearance of black in his hair symbolizes the return of Kaneki's humanity, but it also signifies the resurgence of his trauma. The Black Reaper persona that emerges during this phase is a Kaneki who is ruthless, detached, and emotionally numb, a reflection of his mental state after enduring so much pain and suffering. This version of Kaneki is perhaps the most dangerous, as he has lost hope and purpose, driven only by confusion and despair. Yet, even in his darkest moments, Kaneki finds a way to reclaim his sense of self. In a climactic battle with Arima, he comes to a profound realization about his identity. A mental projection of his childhood friend Hyde encourages him to live, to embrace both his ghoul and human sides. With this acceptance, Kaneki's hair returns to white, symbolizing his full acknowledgement of who he is, a blend of both worlds. This marks the completion of his psychological journey. Kaneki has finally accepted the duality of his existence, no longer trying to suppress or deny either side of himself. By the end of the series, Kaneki has evolved into the One-Eyed King, a leader who understands the necessity of both pain and growth. He realizes that the world is not inherently wrong or cruel, but simply is, a place where suffering and joy coexist. His final character development reflects this mature understanding, as he accepts the role of guiding others who, like him, struggle with their identities. Ken Kaneki's journey through Tokyo Ghoul is a powerful narrative of self-discovery, trauma, and the acceptance of one's true nature. Through his various transformations, both physical and mental, Kaneki embodies the universal struggle of reconciling conflicting aspects of the self, especially in the face of overwhelming adversity. His story serves as a poignant reminder that acceptance, though difficult and often painful, is ultimately the path to inner peace. Happiness is a concept often misunderstood. Many believe it is something to which we are inherently entitled, but the truth is, happiness is not a right. Nor, however, is unhappiness. Instead, the pursuit of happiness is a deeply personal journey, one that each individual must navigate for themselves. Along the way, we may find people to support us, to push us forward when we stumble, but ultimately, the decision of what happiness means and how to achieve it rests on our own shoulders. It is a delicate balance of self-determination and the influence of others, as depicted in the emotional story of Your Lie in April, through the life of its protagonist, Kosei Arima. He is initially portrayed as an emotionless robot, serves as a poignant illustration of the struggle between external expectations and personal fulfillment. As a child prodigy, Arima was pushed to his limits by his mother, who was strict, demanding, and at times, cruel. She wanted nothing more than for him to become a perfect pianist, devoid of flaws. To her, success in music was the only way forward, a black and white path where perfection was the only acceptable outcome. This rigid direction shaped Arima's view of the world, and he began to internalize his mother's expectations. As long as he played the piano flawlessly, he believed that everything would fall into place. But life, much like art, cannot be reduced to technical mastery alone. When Arima's mother dies, he is left in a profound state of confusion and guilt. He convinces himself that had he played better, had he worked harder, perhaps his mother would have survived. This overwhelming sense of responsibility for her death pushes him into a deep emotional paralysis, to the point where he can no longer hear the notes of the piano that once brought him solace. The piano, which had been his anchor, suddenly feels as distant and unreachable as his mother. This tragedy captures a universal truth. When our sense of direction is dictated solely by external pressures, we risk losing touch with ourselves, with the joy that once fueled our passion. However, Arima's journey is not one of isolation. He encounters Kaori Miyazono, a free-spirited violinist who embodies the very essence of artistic expression. Where Arima sees music as a rigid discipline governed by rules and technical precision, Kaori views it as an outlet for emotion, a canvas for personal interpretation. Her passion and reckless abandon in her performances inspire Arima to reconnect with the music in a way that goes beyond accuracy. Through Kaori, Arima learns that art, much like life, is not simply about perfection. It is about expression, feeling, and the willingness to embrace vulnerability. This duality, between Arima's calculated approach to music and Kaori's fluid, emotional interpretation, serves as a broader metaphor for the human experience. Life cannot be reduced to following a set path or meeting certain expectations. True happiness and fulfillment come from within, from finding meaning in what we do, rather than from external validation. Kaori pushes Arima to understand that there is beauty in imperfection, in the ability to interpret and express oneself through art. It is in this space, between discipline and creativity, that Arima begins to rediscover his love for the piano, and more importantly, his sense of self. Yet, Your Lie in April also underscores the profound impact we can have on the lives of others. Arima's story is not just one of personal redemption, but also one of how art, passion, and love can inspire and transform those around us. The characters in the series, particularly Kaori and Arima's childhood friend Tsubaki, are deeply affected by Arima's performances and struggles. Even as a child, Arima's piano playing touched the hearts of others, showing that art has the power to transcend time and resonate across generations. This idea is reflected in the classical music that serves as the backbone of the series, with pieces by composers like Chopin and Bach continuing to move audiences centuries after they were written. This theme of inspiration is central to the message of Your Lie in April. The series suggests that even in our darkest moments, the art we create, the love we share, and the struggles we overcome can leave a lasting impact on the world. Kaori, though her time is tragically cut short, leaves behind a legacy of hope and passion that lives on in Arima. Her influence allows him to find his own voice in music, to interpret the world around him not through the lens of perfection, but through the prism of his own emotions and experiences. The series also reminds us that life's outcomes are not always fair. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, we may not achieve the happy ending we seek. Kaori's illness, which ultimately claims her life, is a painful reminder of this reality. But Your Lie in April emphasizes that, even in the face of such tragedy, it is the journey, the act of striving, that matters. The chances may be slim, but as one character notes, that one chance is always worth pursuing. It is this hope, this refusal to give up in the face of overwhelming odds, that gives life its meaning and beauty. By the end of the series, Arima has grown not only as a musician, but as a person. He has come to terms with his trauma, with the loss of his mother, and with the knowledge that happiness is not something guaranteed, but something to be worked for. He smiles, not because everything is perfect, but because he has found peace in the knowledge that he can now move forward on his own terms. His journey mirrors the broader theme of Your Lie in April, that while we may not have a right to happiness, we have the power to create it for ourselves through love, passion, and the connections we forge with others. In conclusion, Your Lie in April is a powerful reminder that happiness is not a destination, but a process of self-discovery and expression. Arima's story teaches us that, while we may face immense challenges, it is through these struggles that we find our true direction and purpose. And while happiness is not something that can be guaranteed, the journey toward it, fueled by love, passion, and the support of others, is what makes life beautiful. Griffith from Berserk is one of the most complex and divisive characters in the world of manga. His journey throughout the series is marked by a profound mix of ambition, sacrifice, betrayal, and manipulation of destiny. Many readers find themselves conflicted about Griffith, both repulsed by his actions and fascinated by the depth of his character. This essay will explore the intricate nature of Griffith's decisions, especially how his dreams, background, and destiny intertwine, as well as the duality of good and evil that defines him. Griffith's dreams and ambitions. At the core of Griffith's character is his burning desire to achieve his dream, owning a kingdom. This goal drives him throughout the Golden Age arc, where his charisma and vision attract a loyal following, including Guts, the story's protagonist. His dream of a kingdom is not simply a desire for power, but a reflection of Griffith's deep-rooted need to rise above everyone and everything, stemming from his childhood experiences of seeing kingdoms and nobles as superior. Griffith's dream is intricately tied to his sense of self-worth and destiny. He believes he is fated for greatness and is willing to sacrifice anything or anyone to achieve it. However, this ambition is not without its darker side. Throughout the series, we see moments of doubt where Griffith questions whether his dream is worth the suffering and death it brings. These moments of introspection reveal the conflict between his outward persona, the White Hawk, a symbol of purity and leadership, and his inner turmoil and insecurity. Berserk brilliantly drew me into the story, so much so that I initially forgot about the events from the first episode. I had gotten so invested in Guts and the Band of the Hawk, hoping for a happy ending, that the eclipse left me devastated. In hindsight, there were hints all along that Griffith would become a villain, but I was too caught up in rooting for their success to see it. One early moment where I started doubting Griffith's character was when he ordered Guts to assassinate the king's brother, leading to the death of an innocent child. Griffith showed no remorse, and later, during his famous speech to Princess Charlotte, he revealed that he didn't even consider his comrades to be true friends. This mindset, alongside his relentless ambition, signaled Griffith's darker nature. The eclipse, a turning point. For most readers, Griffith's actions during the eclipse event represent the pinnacle of his betrayal and the embodiment of his evil. In this cataclysmic moment, Griffith sacrifices the Band of the Hawk, including many of his loyal companions, to become Femto, a member of the God Hand. The act is so horrifying that it becomes the primary reason why many despise Griffith. He betrays his closest allies, including Guts and Casca, in exchange for power, leading to the infamous and brutal assault on Casca, which marks the darkest moment in his character arc. While the eclipse is a defining moment, it is not the only one that shapes Griffith's complexity. His decision to sacrifice the Band of the Hawk is fueled not just by ambition, but also by despair and personal humiliation. Before the eclipse, Griffith's capture, torture, and physical destruction left him a broken man, unable to achieve his dreams through ordinary means. The eclipse was his way of reclaiming what he believed was his destiny, but at an immense moral cost. Good and evil, a matter of perspective. Understanding Griffith requires a deep examination of the dualities that make up his character. On one hand, Griffith can be seen as a hero by those who live in his kingdom, Falconia, a utopia he establishes after the downfall of the Kashan Empire. For the people of Falconia, Griffith is a savior, a bringer of peace and stability in a world plagued by chaos and darkness. From their perspective, the good Griffith brings far outweighs the evil he has done. However, for those who witnessed Griffith's betrayal, Guts, Casca, and the surviving members of the Band of the Hawk, his actions are nothing short of monstrous. From their point of view, Griffith is a man who sacrificed his friends and allies for his personal gain, and the violence and trauma he inflicted upon them cannot be forgiven. This split in perception is central to the character of Griffith. He is both savior and villain, a figure whose actions can be interpreted as both good and evil depending on the observer's perspective. The role of destiny. A key element in Griffith's character is the concept of destiny. In Berserk, destiny plays a significant role in the lives of both Griffith and Guts, but in different ways. Griffith is portrayed as someone chosen by fate to ascend to greatness. His every action, including his most heinous ones, seems guided by an unseen force, the idea of evil, that shapes the world according to his desires. In this sense, Griffith's rise to power appears inevitable, as though he were merely following a script written by destiny. However, what makes Griffith particularly fascinating is that he is not simply a pawn of destiny, he becomes its master. As Femto, Griffith has the power to bend destiny to his will, achieving whatever he desires. This raises important questions about free will and responsibility. Is Griffith fully accountable for his actions if he is merely following a path laid out for him by fate? Or is he complicit in the evils he commits because he actively chooses to fulfill his destiny, regardless of the consequences? In contrast, Guts is someone who constantly struggles against destiny. Unlike Griffith, Guts fights to forge his own path, even if it means going against the forces that seek to control him. This contrast between Griffith, who embraces his destiny, and Guts, who rebels against it, forms the central conflict of Berserk. Griffith's downfall. While Griffith's control over destiny makes him seem invincible, there are hints throughout the series that his downfall may be tied to his emotions and his desire for something more. As the God Hand's Femto, Griffith no longer feels human emotions, yet there is a part of him, the Moonlight Child, that represents his lingering connection to humanity. This child, who appears sporadically in the series, is a manifestation of Griffith's subconscious desire for a normal life, and may be the key to his undoing. The tension between Griffith's godlike status and his lingering humanity suggests that his eventual downfall may come not from an external force, but from within. His desire to return to a more human existence could lead him to relinquish his power, or it may cause him to make a fatal mistake. In the end, Griffith's greatest strength, his ability to control destiny, may also be his greatest weakness, as his unresolved emotions threaten to unravel the empire he has built. Griffith's character in Berserk is a testament to the complexity of human ambition, destiny, and morality. He is both an inspiring and terrifying figure, embodying the extremes of good and evil, heroism and villainy. His journey raises profound questions about the nature of power, the cost of dreams, and the role of fate in shaping our lives. While his actions may never be fully forgiven or understood, Griffith remains one of the most compelling characters in manga history.
Casca's arc in Berserk stands as one of the most devastating character narratives in manga history, known for the raw emotional power and trauma it conveys. What begins as a tale of a seemingly abrasive, unlikable woman evolves into one of the most gut-wrenching and tragic stories in fiction. Her development from a hardened soldier to a broken woman, stripped of her self-worth and identity, is both heartbreaking and complex, making her one of the most compelling figures in Kentaro Miura's dark epic. The intensity of her character arc speaks not only to the dangers of unrequited infatuation and emotional dependency, but also to the slow and fragile process of self-discovery and how easily it can be shattered. Initially, Casca is portrayed as cold and even detestable. Her fierce loyalty to Griffith, the leader of the Band of the Hawk, blinds her to many of his flaws, causing her to lash out at others, particularly Guts, who quickly gains Griffith's favor. Casca's harshness is not born out of inherent malice, but rather from her deep-seated insecurities and her struggle to prove her worth as a soldier in a world where being a woman made her success nearly impossible. Her aggression is a defense mechanism, one that she uses to shield herself from the vulnerability she feels in her devotion to Griffith. To her, he is more than a leader. He is her savior, the person who gave her a purpose and a life beyond the pitiable existence she once knew. Yet, this dependence on Griffith for her sense of self-worth is ultimately her downfall. What makes Casca's eventual fate during the eclipse so devastating is the journey she undertakes before reaching that moment. Through her interactions with Guts, Casca begins to unravel the layers of her emotional shell. When the two are forced to work together, her initial hostility toward him gradually shifts to a deeper understanding and mutual respect. This connection allows her to begin seeing herself through Guts' eyes rather than Griffith's, a crucial step in her path to personal growth. Guts, unlike Griffith, values Casca not as a tool or a symbol, but as a person. In him, she finds someone who respects her for her strengths and supports her through her weaknesses, and in turn, she begins to build a foundation of self-respect that had long been absent from her life. However, this period of personal growth is short-lived. The tragedy of Casca's character lies in the brutal reversal of this hard-won development. After finally finding a sense of self-worth, everything is ripped away from her during the eclipse. The horrific events of that fateful day, in which Griffith sacrifices his comrades and Casca is raped in front of Guts, shatter her mentally and emotionally. The rape scene is not only shocking for its graphic brutality, but for the psychological devastation it inflicts on Casca. In that single act, all the progress she had made in finding her identity and self-worth is obliterated. She becomes a shell of her former self, lost in a mental fog where the trauma of that day haunts her at every turn. This tragic fall from personal growth to complete mental destruction resonates deeply with readers. Casca's story is a powerful commentary on how fragile self-worth can be, especially when it is tied to the approval of others. Her devotion to Griffith, who never reciprocates her feelings in any meaningful way, leaves her vulnerable and ultimately exploited. Casca's need for validation from someone who values ambition over personal connection makes her tragic downfall all the more inevitable. She could never become the independent person Griffith would respect because she tied her self-worth so completely to his approval. What is even more tragic is that Casca's journey mirrors the experiences of many who struggle with self-esteem and self-worth. Her early dependence on Griffith, her jealousy of Guts, and her slow realization that she could be more than just a follower are all parts of a deeply human struggle. Many readers see in Casca a reflection of their own experiences with unrequited love, emotional dependence, and the quest for validation. Her tragic fall, while fantastical in its brutality, taps into real fears: the fear of losing oneself to the opinions and expectations of others, and the fear that all the progress made in finding one's identity can be taken away in an instant. The intimate bond between Casca and Guts is perhaps the most significant relationship in her life, offering her a glimpse of what it means to be valued for who she is, not for what she can do for someone else. Their shared trauma, both victims of sexual violence, fosters a deep mutual understanding that transcends typical romantic connections. In Guts, Casca finds someone who not only sees her as an equal, but respects her for the person she is, not as an extension of someone else's dream. The trust and vulnerability that develop between them signify the growth she desperately needed, offering a glimpse of a life where she could define herself by her own terms, rather than through Griffith's eyes. However, the weight of her trauma casts a long shadow over this growth. The mental and emotional collapse she suffers following the eclipse is a gutting reminder that progress in self-discovery is often delicate and easily destroyed by external forces. For Casca, the trauma of the eclipse was not just an assault on her body, but a complete destruction of the person she was becoming. For readers of Berserk, the fate of Casca remains a central concern. Will she ever regain her sense of self? Will she ever heal from the trauma that shattered her mind? The hope that Casca might one day be restored to the person she was becoming is not just a desire for a happy ending, but a reflection of the human need for closure and healing. Her journey is one that resonates deeply because it touches on universal themes of self-worth, identity, and the struggle to overcome trauma. Casca's story in Berserk is not just one of the most devastating in manga history because of the horrors she endures, but because it is a poignant exploration of how difficult it can be to build self-respect, and how easily that respect can be lost. Through Casca, Kentaro Miura offers readers a deeply human and tragic figure, one whose struggle for identity and self-worth is as inspiring as it is heartbreaking. Berserk is perhaps one of the least family-friendly series to ever capture mainstream attention. Its dark and mature themes, including extreme violence and disturbing content, make it an unlikely candidate for delivering life lessons. However, despite its intense and often grim narrative, Berserk contains some of the most profound lessons about life, personal growth, and resilience. Lessons that every individual, especially younger audiences, can benefit from. Central to these lessons is the character of Guts, the Black Swordsman, who ironically emerges as one of the most compelling role models in manga. At first glance, the notion of Guts as a role model seems paradoxical. He is a character who has made massive mistakes and is driven by rage, hatred, and a desire for vengeance. Up until a certain point in the series, it is difficult to categorize Guts as a good man in any conventional sense. Yet, it is precisely these flaws, rather than in spite of them, that make Guts a powerful role model. Like many of us, Guts has made mistakes, massive ones, but what sets him apart is his ability to reflect on his actions, take responsibility, and strive to be better, no matter how difficult the journey may be. One of the most significant aspects of Guts' character is his honest self-awareness. Unlike many characters in fiction who find redemption in a single, transformative moment, Guts' journey is slow, painful, and filled with self-loathing. He regrets the things he has done, and as the story progresses, he comes to a critical realization. His choices are his own. He has no one to blame for his actions but himself. This realization doesn't come easily, nor does it immediately lead to a change in behavior. However, it plants the seed for growth, leading Guts to make decisions that ultimately steer him towards a path of redemption. When Guts assaults Casca, he does not blame circumstances or external forces but holds himself accountable. This moment of self-awareness leads him to do something he deeply resents: traveling with others. The lesson here is clear. Though it is incredibly difficult, it is essential to reflect on one's actions, recognize one's faults, and strive to be better. This message is not unique to Berserk, but few series convey it with the same level of honesty and difficulty. The theme of controlling one's emotions, particularly rage, is another core lesson that Berserk imparts through Guts. During the Black Swordsman arc and the Lost Children chapters, Guts is consumed by anger and hatred. However, the series portrays this anger not as a source of strength, but as a destructive force. Guts' rage alienates him from others and drives a wedge between him and the people he cares about. Berserk contrasts sharply with other series that celebrate unbridled rage, especially when it stems from a desire for vengeance. Instead of glorifying Guts' fury, Berserk emphasizes the importance of controlling one's emotions. When Guts dons the Berserker armor, he isn't embracing his hatred but actively resisting it to protect those he cares about. The series teaches that while it is natural to feel anger, especially in the face of injustice, it is crucial to control these emotions rather than letting them control you. This distinction is challenging to grasp but is essential for leading a fulfilling life. Perhaps the most important lesson Berserk offers is the harsh reality of powerlessness. In life, there are times when no matter how hard you try or how much you grow, things simply won't go your way. This sense of powerlessness is a central theme in Berserk, represented by the concept of causality, the idea that one event sets off a chain reaction, leading to outcomes that are often beyond anyone's control. Guts' life is a testament to this. Everything good in his life has been ripped away from him time and again for reasons entirely out of his control. However, instead of succumbing to despair or blaming the world for his misfortunes, Guts pushes back against this sense of powerlessness. Unlike many of the series' antagonists, who blame others for their circumstances and become monsters as a result, Guts takes responsibility for his actions and continues to fight, even when the odds are against him. This resilience in the face of adversity is what makes Guts a true role model. He embodies the idea that even when life is unfair, even when everything is against you, it is essential to keep fighting, to keep striving for something better. Guts teaches us to be defined not by what weighs us down, but by what we overcome. This is a lesson that many series aimed at younger audiences overlook or simplify, focusing instead on the idea that hard work and dedication will always lead to success. Berserk challenges this notion by acknowledging that sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you will fail. However, it also emphasizes that failure is not the end. What matters is how you respond to it. In conclusion, Berserk offers three core lessons through the character of Guts: the importance of self-reflection and accountability, the necessity of controlling one's emotions, and the resilience to keep fighting even when the world seems against you. These are complicated issues, filled with nuances that can be difficult to navigate. Yet, they are among the most important lessons for anyone, especially young adults, to learn. While Berserk may not be suitable for all audiences due to its mature content, the lessons it imparts through Guts are universal and timeless. Guts' journey from a vengeful, rage-filled warrior to a figure of resilience and self-awareness is one that resonates deeply, offering a powerful example of what it means to grow, to learn from one's mistakes, and to keep fighting, no matter what life throws your way.
Many of you are likely acquainted with Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most significant yet contentious philosophers of contemporary history. His controversial reputation is, in part, the result of how his ideas are frequently misrepresented in popular media. Numerous television shows and films allude to his philosophies, and anime is no exception. Regardless of whether it was a deliberate choice, the narrative of Berserk is deeply infused with Nietzschean themes. For example, in chapter 220, during a moment where Shirka explores the astral realm, she recalls advice from her teacher, Flora. Should the power transcend the caster's control, there exists the danger of the caster being consumed. Remember, when you peer into the abyss stares back at you. This echoes one of Nietzsche's renowned quotes from Beyond Good and Evil. He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will also gaze back into you. This concept of potentially becoming the very monster one battles resonates profoundly with Guts. Consumed by rage and resentment toward Griffith, he dedicates himself to tracking down and obliterating apostles in his quest for revenge. Yet this only intensifies his hatred. If I were to find a metaphor for his struggle, it would be akin to exercising a muscle. His desire for destruction becomes more formidable the more he indulges it, much like a muscle develops with continued use. This internal conflict is epitomized by the Beast of Darkness, which grows stronger and more dominant as Guts nurtures his fury. However, if Guts allows anger to be his sole guide, he risks transforming into the monster he vehemently opposes. In his donning of the Berserker armor, Guts succumbs to his rage, becoming more beast than man. The Skull Knight and the Beast warn him that this unchecked anger may lead to total self-loss, potentially turning him into a monstrous being akin to Griffith, who sacrifices his humanity in pursuit of his ambitions. Griffith embodies many traits associated with Nietzsche's concept of the superior individual. He believes that humanity can be divided into two groups, the higher men and the herd. The higher man is characterized by a unifying life's project that endures beyond their existence. This aligns perfectly with Griffith's goal of establishing his own kingdom, an ambition that distinguishes him from the other members of the Band of the Hawk. As Judo observes in Chapter 16, Griffith presents both a seemingly naive demeanor and a chilling intensity, leaving others uncertain whether he is a child or an adult, a hero or a villain. The truth is, there is something inherently different about him that the ordinary person cannot quite grasp. Nietzsche suggests that the higher individual operates in solitude, unmarred by the praise or criticism of the herd. Griffith reflects this very idea when he asserts that any friend must be of equal stature, possessing their own dreams. He cannot associate himself with those who depend on another's vision, reinforcing Nietzsche's idea that higher individuals do not require the support of others for their existence. Guts acknowledges this theme while sitting with Casca, comparing the flames of campfires to the individual ambitions of the Hawks. However, he criticizes those who relinquish their personal aspirations to align with Griffith's greater dream, suggesting their reliance signifies weakness. This motif recurs in Chapter 169, titled Those Who Cling and Those Who Struggle, where Guts confronts Moscus, who tries to justify his violence in the name of protecting the innocents, but is ultimately revealed as one who merely prays and relies on the faith of others. This pattern of dependency is also evident in the character of Nina during the Conviction arc. Her journey reveals her envy and resentment towards her assertive friend, Luca, which she realizes stems from her desire to emulate Luca's strength and independence. Nietzsche viewed envy as a potential catalyst for self-discovery, enabling individuals to grasp their true desires, as Nina ultimately does. Nietzsche was vocally critical of religion, arguing that it provided false comfort to those too weak to fight for their true desires. He suggested that it breeds a slave morality, a framework where the virtues of the higher men are vilified by those unable to attain them. This dynamic is echoed in the Conviction arc, where the Catholic-like Holy See and the heretics represent differing yet fundamentally similar religious ideologies, ultimately leading to self-delusion and tragedy, regardless of their underlying beliefs. In the philosophical context, Nietzsche likened religion to a narcotic, much like alcohol, a means of escaping the harsh realities of life. He viewed the human urge to inflict pain as innate, suggesting that societal constraints lead us to internalize these feelings as guilt, rationalizing our suffering through doctrines of guilt and sin. This philosophy finds reflection in the beliefs and actions of characters in the Conviction arc, where individuals inflict pain upon themselves in line with their faith. Finally, Guts' evolution as a character encapsulates Nietzsche's concept of self-overcoming. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche articulates the need for individuals to surpass their limitations, a process that Guts embodies through his development. Initially, he represents the camel, dutifully carrying out his tasks without questioning their purpose. The pivotal moment occurs when he meets Griffith, prompting him to question his motivations and, ultimately, to evolve into the lion who asserts his will and seeks his path. Yet, to achieve true self-overcoming, Guts must confront the dragon of Thou Shalt, uncovering his genuine desires apart from societal expectations. Although Guts has not yet transcended to the final stage, referred to by Nietzsche as the child, It is a journey toward discovering true meaning and autonomy. The conclusion of Guts' story may very well lie in that realization. The chilling depiction of a tree adorned with the lifeless bodies of the hanged serves as the prologue to our tale. From one of these corpses, a baby named Guts miraculously emerges, defying the odds as he begins his life amidst decay and despair. Despite the bleakness surrounding him, Guts clings to life. His existence appears both impossible and absurd, and thus he takes his first step into the existential saga of Berserk. As fate would have it, a band of mercenaries arrives, and Guts finds himself adopted by Gambino and a troubled woman named Shizu. She had been devastated by a previous miscarriage and is rumored to have changed ever since, while her husband remains indifferent, absorbed in his own struggles. Even as Shizu succumbs to the plague, Gambino remains absent, leaving only Guts by her side. Years later, Guts is raised under the harsh and toxic influence of Gambino, who inflicts a scar on Guts' nose during a fit of rage after a spar. Despite Gambino's cruelty, he manages to win Guts over temporarily when he gives him healing ointment. However, on one fateful night, a man named Donovan enters Guts' tent and abuses him, claiming that Gambino had sold Guts for a night. In disbelief, Guts kills Donovan, only to later accept Gambino's feigned ignorance about the incident. This fragile trust shatters when Gambino is injured in battle and drunkenly stumbles into Guts' tent, lamenting that Guts is cursed and that he is responsible for Shizu's death, ultimately confessing to having sold him. In their chaos, Gambino accidentally causes his own death when Guts instinctively defends himself, leading Gambino's band to pursue Guts afterward. In fleeing atop a horse, Guts is shot down and falls from a cliff, where he is presumed dead. As he lies in a pool of water under the stars, a profound sense of loneliness envelops him, thrusting him into a world of adult independence. Guts never intended to kill Gambino. It was an act of instinct driven by the will to survive. As he traverses the vast canyon, he learns to defend himself again and again. This primal instinct becomes a defining trait of his existence. In that moment, Guts' life appears devoid of meaning. He has no family, no aspirations, yet his sword remains a lifeline. Despite the futility of his battles, this singular experience fortifies his mindset for the road ahead. Soon after, Guts emerges as a mercenary, catching the eye of Griffith through his fierce independence and reliance solely on himself and his weapon. After easily vanquishing a formidable enemy, Guts finds himself enlisted in Griffith's Band of the Hawk. Throughout the Golden Age arc, we witness Guts' internal monologues, where he grapples with the idea of working alongside a group once more. His longing for connection surfaces, and he tentatively opens up to the other members of the band. However, this newfound belonging is soon tested when he overhears Griffith discussing his ambitions. Guts realizes he cannot subordinate himself to another man's dreams, feeling the urge to forge his own path, a sentiment Griffith ironically appreciates, considering it a trait of true friendship. During his time with the Band of the Hawk, Guts encounters Casca, a woman infatuated with Griffith. Years prior, she was rescued from a nobleman's assault by Griffith, who became her savior. Initially, Guts and Casca's relationship is fraught with tension, both enduring one another for Griffith's sake. As jealousy brews within Casca, she confides in Guts about her feelings and ambitions, coming to terms with the reality that Griffith's aspirations may never align with her own. Eventually, Casca begins to develop feelings for Guts. In a pivotal moment, Guts leaves the Band of the Hawk, shattering Griffith's sword in the process, a clear metaphor for the collapse of Griffith's dreams, which would lead to catastrophic events. However, Guts himself remains conflicted, reflecting upon his sword as an essential part of his identity. While he considers if it represents his aspirations, he ultimately concludes it is merely a tool for survival, an ever-present companion through his life. When Guts returns to find Casca has become the Band of the Hawk's new leader, his homecoming is met with fury and sorrow. Casca, dedicated to the remnants of the band and shattered by Griffith's actions, despairs over the loss of everything that once mattered to her, culminating in an attempt to end her life. Guts intervenes, rescuing her, reminiscent of their earlier shared traumas. In the midst of rekindled feelings, Guts, haunted by memories of both Gambino's and Donovan's assaults, experiences a traumatic flashback. This moment compels him to confront his buried past, pouring out his regrets and guilt over Gambino's death. Here, Guts finally recognizes the burden of his unresolved trauma, a poignant realization that he is no longer constrained to bear it alone. Grateful for their shared bond, Casca no longer fears change, realizing her place beside Guts. In their intimacy, they find solace, yet Guts can't shake the haunting memories linked to his childhood. This poignant moment is a pinnacle of characterization in the manga, evoking a blend of sadness, warmth, and tragedy. However, the narrative takes a darker turn as the Golden Age culminates, leading to Guts's relentless quest for purpose after the devastation of his newfound connections. In the aftermath, Guts grapples with regret, haunted by the loss of Casca and the fallout of his friendship with Griffith, which dissolves amidst the chaos of the eclipse. The world of Berserk descends into darkness as Guts battles post-traumatic stress that shapes his every move, overshadowed by the demons of his past and the emotional scars that burden him. Despite the bleakness, Guts and Casca symbolize the potential for change, hinting at the overarching theme of causality. Unlike the doomed characters reflected in their backstories, Guts is not irrevocably bound to their fates. This notion is reinforced by Flora, who assures that one's destiny is not cyclical, but rather a spiral, suggesting the possibility of transcending past mistakes. Following the eclipse, a glimmer of hope emerges with the being who saves Guts and Casca, representing a new chance at forging a path forward. It's this constant struggle and search for meaning that characterizes Guts' journey through the series. As Guts navigates the aftermath of the Golden Age arc, his struggles with connection and vulnerability highlight a significant character evolution. Though it may take time, there is hope that Guts can confront the drama imposed upon him and find peace within himself. This resolution would create a fitting conclusion to a tale marked by existentialism and trauma.
Eikichi Onizuka, the protagonist of Great Teacher Onizuka, starts off as an unlikely candidate for a teaching role. His initial motivation to become a teacher is shallow. He simply wants to be around beautiful schoolgirls. But as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that there's much more to him. Behind his crass exterior and questionable behavior lies a unique, heartfelt approach to education, one that critiques the rigid Japanese school system while providing meaningful life lessons to his students. Onizuka, a former delinquent and biker gang member, challenges conventional norms with his bold methods. But in doing so, he teaches us deeper lessons about life, individuality, and the importance of genuine human connections. At first glance, Onizuka doesn't fit the mold of what society expects from a teacher. He's unprofessional, immature, and often absurdly reckless. He makes a terrible first impression at Kichijoji Private Institute, where both teachers and students view him as incompetent. However, as the series progresses, Onizuka proves that there's more to teaching than academic qualifications. Despite his flaws, he becomes one of the most effective teachers in the school by reaching his students in ways traditional methods could never achieve. In one of his most memorable moments, Onizuka helps Noboru Yoshikawa, a bullied student who attempts suicide. Rather than just offering sympathy, Onizuka takes a bold approach, making the bullies feel the same fear and helplessness they inflicted on Yoshikawa. By doing this, Onizuka helps both the victim and the bullies understand the emotional weight of their actions, teaching them empathy in a way the school system never could. Onizuka's methods may be unconventional, but they are effective because they go beyond academic success. His focus is on the emotional and psychological well-being of his students. In many ways, Onizuka's teaching style parallels that of John Keating in Dead Poets Society, where the educator challenges the rigid structures of traditional schooling to help students find their voices. At the heart of GTO lies a critique of the Japanese educational system, particularly its obsession with academic excellence at the expense of students' emotional well-being. In the 1990s, when the series is set, Japan was dealing with a declining birth rate and the aftermath of an economic bubble burst. This led to intense competition in schools, where students were pressured to meet impossibly high standards from an early age. The result was a system that prioritized grades and reputation over students' mental health. The character Vice Principal Uchiha embodies this flawed system. He is more concerned with maintaining the school's prestige than addressing the bullying and emotional struggles students face. Uchiha represents a school administration that is disconnected from the students' real needs, focusing instead on enforcing rules and upholding the school's image. This disconnection between adults and teenagers is central to the series' conflict and serves as a metaphor for the larger issue in Japanese society, where traditional values often fail to address the changing needs of the younger generation. Onizuka's role in this environment is revolutionary. He defies the norms of this rigid system and, through his outrageous methods, bridges the gap between teachers and students. His philosophy directly counters the school's focus on rules and reputation. To him, what matters most is helping students overcome their personal struggles, even if it means breaking the rules. Onizuka isn't afraid to challenge authority and tradition if it means protecting and guiding his students toward a better understanding of themselves. Onizuka's past as a member of a biker gang plays a crucial role in shaping his philosophy. In the 1980s and 1990s, these gangs were a form of rebellion against the strict expectations of Japanese society. Onizuka, having lived as an outsider, understands the pressures of trying to fit into a system that doesn't suit everyone. His past mistakes and rough experiences give him a unique perspective on life, allowing him to connect with troubled students who feel similarly misunderstood or alienated. Unlike most teachers, Onizuka doesn't judge his students for their flaws. He sees beyond their academic performance or rebellious behavior, and instead focuses on understanding them as individuals. This ability to relate to his students on a personal level makes him a role model, even if he doesn't fit the traditional image of a teacher. By embracing his own identity, Onizuka encourages his students to do the same. His philosophy is simple yet profound. It's okay to be yourself, and there's no need to conform to society's expectations if it means losing who you are. One of the most powerful examples of this is his relationship with Kanzaki Urumi, a child prodigy with a deep distrust of teachers due to past trauma. Onizuka manages to break through her emotional barriers by treating her not as a genius or a problem to be solved, but as a person with real feelings. His approach shows that emotional intelligence is just as important as intellectual intelligence when it comes to teaching. Onizuka's influence goes beyond academic teachings. He imparts valuable life lessons that resonate deeply with his students. In a world that often pushes young people to follow predetermined paths, Onizuka's philosophy is about embracing individuality and living without regrets. His carefree attitude isn't about recklessness, but about freedom. Freedom to make mistakes, to learn from them, and to grow as a person. Throughout GTO, Onizuka consistently puts himself on the line to help his students, even if it means risking his job or his safety. Whether it's standing up to corrupt school officials or confronting bullies, Onizuka shows that the true role of a teacher is to protect and guide, not simply to impart knowledge. His belief in the power of human connections and emotional growth makes him an unforgettable character and a powerful critique of modern education systems that often neglect these aspects. Eikichi Onizuka is far from the typical teacher, but his philosophy makes him one of the most impactful characters in the world of anime and manga. Great teacher Onizuka uses humor, action, and heart to deliver a meaningful message about the flaws in the Japanese education system and the importance of understanding and supporting students on a personal level. Onizuka's unconventional methods, his background as a delinquent, and his commitment to his students' well-being make him a unique and refreshing role model. His lessons go beyond textbooks. They're about life, individuality, and the courage to live authentically, no matter how many rules you have to break along the way. It's in our nature to project our inner struggles outward, often altering our external persona to compensate for deep-seated issues. This tendency is pervasive. For example, bullies often lash out at others because they lack self-confidence and need a way to feel better about themselves. Similarly, someone who appears flamboyant and extroverted might actually be hiding deep insecurity. And most relevant to this discussion, those who mock society from a distance might secretly crave the very things they criticize. Hikigaya Hachiman, the protagonist of My Teen Romantic Comedy, embodies this idea. He's an introspective, prideful, and cynical high school student who views youth, high school life, and social interactions with disdain. To him, they're nothing more than illusions maintained by shallow people who are too busy deceiving themselves and others. Hachiman distances himself from these perceived falsities, proudly declaring himself a loner. He intentionally makes himself unlikable, always wearing a bitter expression and avoiding meaningful connections, except for his relationship with his little sister. Despite his self-awareness, Hachiman lies to himself on a surface level, even though deep down he knows the truth. He's a product of his environment, shaped by past experiences that have taught him to view the world as an ugly place with no room for him. Having been shunned, bullied, and dismissed, he has learned to hide his vulnerabilities and equates showing weakness with being inherently bad. To Hachiman, any sympathy or kindness directed at him feels like dishonest condescension. But does he really believe that? Or does he still, deep down, hope for genuine kindness? Hachiman tries to be repulsive, pushing others away to protect himself from the pain of dishonesty. He convinces himself that his cynical outlook is a form of strength, a refusal to change or admit defeat. But the truth is, he's afraid to be honest because honesty has only ever led to pain. He wants to believe that people can be kind, but his experiences have made that belief impossible. Yet, despite his defenses, his true nature occasionally shines through. He tells himself he doesn't need others, that he doesn't need connection, and that he can be fulfilled on his own. But these are just excuses to avoid the effort it would take to open up, an effort he fears would only lead to disappointment. Deep down, Hachiman is a compassionate, good person, but he's been hurt too many times by school crushes, cliques, and classmates. His experiences have taught him not to trust others, to build a wall around himself, and to believe that he's unworthy of happiness. Despite all this, Hachiman's desire to help others remains strong. This contradiction is most evident in the service club he joins at the beginning of the story, where he sacrifices his reputation and well-being to help others, suffering humiliation after humiliation. His way of helping is radically altruistic, often at great personal cost. He's a kind soul, but he's so withdrawn and hurt that he doesn't know how to communicate his kindness. This is a sad state of affairs. Hachiman is constantly trying to express his caring nature, but his past experiences have left him unable to do so effectively. He resorts to self-sacrifice because it's familiar to him, and because he believes it's all he deserves. His pride makes it difficult for him to change, even though he knows deep down that he needs to. Hachiman's story is one of fear, fear of being hurt, fear of being used, and fear of being vulnerable. Beneath the quirky, cheerful surface of Origairu lies the tragic tale of someone who has never learned to connect with others, despite desperately wanting to. He's on constant alert, terrified of being hurt again, and this prevents him from accepting help or forming close bonds with others. But this changes when two young women, Yuigahama and Yukino, enter his life. They care for Hachiman and offer him a place of comfort and happiness, something he's not used to. It's painful for them to see Hachiman continue to hurt himself, but he's so unfamiliar with genuine kindness that he can't fully comprehend their concern. Over time, however, he begins to see the harm he's causing to those he cares about, and he decides to make a change. His outer shell gradually wears away, allowing him to grow closer to Uegahama and Yukino, who teach him that he does have value and that he deserves to be happy. However, as Hachiman's relationships with the two girls deepen, he finds himself in a dilemma. He's criticized others for maintaining superficial social dynamics to avoid conflict, but now he's doing the same thing. Both girls clearly have feelings for him, and he has feelings for them, but he's afraid to disrupt their happy little group. The longer he hesitates, the more aware they all become of the situation, and the more superficial their interactions feel. Exactly what Hachiman despises. What Hachiman needs to learn is that being vulnerable is a fundamental part of being human. You can't experience the joy of connection without risking the pain of loss. For someone who has longed for connection his entire life, it's understandable that Hachiman is afraid of losing the relationships he's built. But he must learn to prioritize his own happiness, to listen to his heart, and to trust that the bonds he's formed are strong enough to withstand any challenge. Taking this leap of faith and validating his own desires may be the most important decision Hachiman ever makes. It's okay to show weakness, to take risks, and to want things for yourself because there will always be someone who cares for you. The world of storytelling often creates a powerful reflection of our own reality, blurring the lines between fiction and life. One of the most intriguing narrative techniques is the story within a story, where the tale the characters are reading begins to mirror their own lives, with phrases and themes repeating in both worlds. This layered storytelling adds depth and complexity, as characters become entangled in their own psychological labyrinths, often in disturbing and deeply unsettling ways. A notable example of this narrative device is seen in Monster by Naoki Urasawa, where the character's reality begins to echo the story they are immersed in. However, in Flowers of Evil, Aku no Hana, this concept is taken to another level, becoming even more abstract and emotionally jarring. Flowers of Evil is not a typical manga. It's a raw and disturbing psychological exploration that delves into the darkest corners of the human psyche. If you're not comfortable with themes that dig deep into psychological torment and unsettling behavior, this may not be the story for you. But for those who are drawn to the raw exploration of the human condition, it offers a powerful, albeit uncomfortable, reading experience. What makes Flowers of Evil stand out, beyond its unsettling atmosphere, is its exploration of guilt, obsession, and the idea of letting go of one's past. At the heart of the story is Kasuga, a middle school boy whose life takes a drastic turn after a fateful encounter with Nakamura, a classmate who is as disturbing as she is unpredictable. Their relationship becomes the catalyst for a series of events that spiral into a psychological nightmare. Early on, we see Kasuga as an awkward, shy boy with little confidence, typical of many coming-of-age stories. He has a crush on a girl in his class, but it's Nakamura, the foul-mouthed and socially inept girl, who becomes the driving force of the narrative. Her character is immediately unsettling, and it's clear from the beginning that there's something profoundly wrong with her. Nakamura's influence over Kasuga is less about attraction and more about manipulation, and this manipulation slowly corrodes Kasuga's innocence. The disturbing events that follow unfold in a way that makes you forget these characters are only middle schoolers, their actions and decisions feeling far more adult and far more horrifying. The story is not just about the degradation of Kasuga's innocence, but also about the destructive power of obsession. Nakamura's presence in his life pushes him into increasingly dark places, and as readers, we are left questioning why these characters are making the choices they do. Yet, as is often the case with psychological narratives, reasoning takes a backseat to raw emotion. Humans, particularly young and impressionable ones, often act on impulse rather than logic, and Flowers of Evil captures this dangerous spontaneity with an almost unnerving precision. The themes of obsession and guilt are palpable throughout the story. Nakamura becomes a representation of Kasuga's internal demons, while the object of his crush serves as a distant ideal, something pure and unattainable. As the story progresses, the boundaries between right and wrong blur, and the characters are swallowed by their own darker instincts. The reader is drawn into their psychological descent, where the normal rules of morality no longer apply, and every action feels like it's teetering on the edge of something catastrophic. One of the most fascinating aspects of Flowers of Evil is its use of imagery and repetition, reminiscent of Neon Genesis Evangelion, where recurring visuals are used to convey deeper psychological messages. As the characters spiral further into darkness, the story itself reflects their unraveling, with symbolism and motifs that evoke a sense of existential dread. Each chapter peels back another layer of the character's psyche, revealing the trauma and emotional scars that drive them. At its core, Flowers of Evil is a story about guilt, self-hatred, and the longing for redemption. Kasuga's journey from middle school into high school, where he becomes a shadow of his former self, is a powerful exploration of how trauma shapes identity. The emotional weight of his past haunts him, and the story skillfully portrays his desperate attempt to escape it. But, as the narrative ultimately suggests, there is no true escape from one's past. Instead, the only way forward is through acceptance, an acceptance of one's failures, mistakes, and the burdens they carry. The catharsis that comes from this realization is one of the story's most poignant aspects. By the latter half of the manga, Kasuga has matured, having faced the demons of his past. He finds a glimmer of hope, a sense of closure that many people, in fiction and real life alike, struggle to attain. The idea that closure is not about forgetting the past but about accepting it is a profound message that resonates deeply, especially within the context of such a psychologically driven narrative. Flowers of Evil is not a story for everyone. Its exploration of the human condition is dark, unsettling, and at times deeply disturbing. The characters are often unlikable, their actions frustrating and morally ambiguous. But it is this very discomfort that makes the manga so effective. It forces the reader to confront the uncomfortable truths of human nature, the impulsive, irrational, and often destructive side of ourselves that we try to bury beneath layers of civility. Despite its brevity at only 57 chapters, Flowers of Evil leaves a lasting impact. It's a story that you may need to revisit multiple times to fully grasp its psychological complexity. The emotional toll it takes on the reader is heavy, and it's not an enjoyable read in the traditional sense. But for those who appreciate stories that challenge the mind and explore the darker aspects of humanity, it is a narrative that is worth diving into. So basically, Flowers of Evil is a haunting exploration of guilt, obsession, and the struggle for redemption. It's a psychological journey that delves into the depths of human emotion, forcing readers to confront the uncomfortable realities of their own minds. It may not be a pleasant read, but it is certainly an unforgettable one. If you're an anime fan and happen to enjoy Neon Genesis Evangelion like I do, you've probably come across people labeling Shinji Ikari as annoying or poorly written. With that in mind, let's discuss why the hate towards Shinji Ikari is completely misguided. One frequent criticism thrown at Shinji is that he's always running away, never getting in the damn robot to save humanity and just whining about it. But you might be surprised to learn how many times he actually does get in the mech. Sure, he doesn't always do it immediately, but that's because he's wrestling with some serious inner conflict, which is essential for his character development. Each time he's told to pilot the mech, it's a major internal battle for him. He does it because he's told to, but at that point in the story, whichever example you want to pick, Shinji hasn't yet learned to think for himself. So why does he do it? Because Shinji believes that following orders will make him loved, and by extension, useful. This is a fundamental flaw in his character. He's a people pleaser. And let's not forget that Shinji isn't in a good mental state. He's dealing with depression and tries to escape his harsh reality in any way possible. One of his coping mechanisms is to follow others' instructions, so he doesn't have to make decisions on his own. This frees him from the burden of choice and, to quote Samuel Johnson, the pain of being a man. Or to put it in the words of Cheap Trick, Shinji wants you to want him, but he also needs you to need him. Many people mistake this as Shinji literally running away, becoming whiny and useless. But in reality, he doesn't run away, not even at the end of the series. He always comes back to pilot the EVA, hoping to find acceptance from others. It's really that simple. You could argue that his tendency to mentally run away from his problems makes him annoying. But I would ask, what would be the point of the show without this mental struggle? Because that's the core of the story. Shinji's journey toward accepting himself. Dismissing the character and the show with "he's annoying" is a shallow criticism. What I'm really trying to say is that Shinji Ikari is misunderstood. His journey through Neon Genesis Evangelion and the end of Evangelion is far more complex than it appears at first glance. There's a lot of build-up, intricate writing, and depth that some viewers may choose to overlook because they subjectively dislike the series. And perhaps that's because the director was just that skilled at crafting this character. In a way, the audience is almost meant to dislike Shinji Ikari. So, you might be wondering, am I trying to convince you not to hate him or to hate him? Well, it's a bit of both. You should dislike Shinji, but only because he doesn't do everything in his power to help himself. As a viewer, it's natural to feel frustrated, angry, or upset with Shinji and his actions. For much of the show, he fails to make the right choices, and that can be incredibly frustrating, leading many to give up on him entirely. But this reaction is intentional, driven by the show's direction and writing. Even the characters within the story are exasperated with Shinji because he rarely thinks or acts independently. Shinji wants to do the right thing, to be happy, and to make others happy. But he goes about it all wrong. Love and acceptance can't come from others until they come from within. This is Shinji's biggest flaw, yet it's also his most human and relatable one. A flaw we all have at some point or another. Have you ever been a people pleaser? Have you ever pretended until you made it? Have you ever craved love so much that you would sacrifice a part of yourself for it? That's Shinji in a nutshell. A person who hasn't found his confidence, who hasn't been guided in the right direction, and who is simply lost. Let's consider this from a different angle. What if Shinji Ikari were replaced with you in the series? Imagine you've self-inserted yourself into the story. How would you react in his situation? Before you answer, keep in mind everything I've said. You'd be piloting a mech inhabited by the spirit of your deceased mother, which also essentially requires you to drown to operate it. Your family is in tatters, your mother is dead, your father despises you. And oh yeah, you're solely responsible for saving the entire human race from literal angels. So, is Shinji Ikari really annoying for cracking under this immense pressure? Let's be real. 100% of you watching right now, if you were in Shinji's shoes, would not be the hero of the day. You wouldn't get a harem of girls, and there would be no celebration at the end. You're estranged from your family, living with a stranger who's an alcoholic, and you're humanity's only hope against the apocalypse. Don't you think you'd crack under that kind of stress? Shinji Ikari is not a bad character. You might not like him, you might find him annoying or dislike various aspects of the anime. You might even hate his shirt, or the fact that he's not a self-insert protagonist who ends up with Masato, which, let's face it, is weird given the age difference. But whatever issues you have with Shinji that boil down to, he's whiny, why doesn't he just get in the robot, are weak criticisms and only show that you didn't truly understand what Evangelion is really about. It's about a 14-year-old kid thrown into a no-win situation, struggling to accept his role as the potential savior of Earth, all while he's still in middle school. Shinji Ikari simply isn't capable of fully grasping the magnitude of what's expected of him. And honestly, if you had to choose, would you prefer yet another character who gets the girl in the end, has a perfect life filled with romance, is naturally gifted at everything, and ultimately brute forces his way to victory like Kirito from Sword Art Online? Or do you want a character with depth, who's well-written and shows the human side of a difficult situation? The choice is yours. But before you declare Shinji Ikari a bad character, remember that not every anime protagonist has to be perfect. There's room for characters like Shinji, who remains one of the most well-crafted and complex characters in all of anime history. I rewatched Welcome to N.H.K, and I have to admit that now that I'm older, this anime resonates too much with me, to a scary level. In the story of Sato, we see a young man who has withdrawn from society, living as a shut-in and feeling trapped in a cycle of isolation and despair. Sato represents the modern figure of the hikikomori, someone who has chosen to live in extreme seclusion, often due to a mix of social anxiety, fear of failure, and lack of purpose. Rather than seeking help, Sato rejects all offers to change his life. I was constantly amazed by how N.H.K handled Sato's hikikomori. While the anime definitely did point to obvious solutions and the foolishness of the condition, it also treated it with an incredible amount of respect that I hadn't expected. The anime explored Sato's reasons for being hikikomori, his hang-ups, his hopes, and his complicated feelings towards simply being happy with his choices. There were very serious repercussions to Sato suddenly being in so much at once, which N.H.K was prepared to deal with, and it didn't shy away from the very real psychological and emotional challenges that come from simply wanting change. That being said, N.H.K also showcases just how simple and stupid Sato's mindset is. While it portrays hikikomori as something serious with real consequences, it's equally critical of the conditions that Sato allows himself to live in. Sato recognizes that he is only able to be hikikomori because he is cared for by others, and this irony holds him hostage as he struggles to find meaning for himself. Many times throughout the show, Sato is confronted by people who want to help him, and this will momentarily snap him out of his wallowing. But venturing outside comes as such a shock that Sato is not able to do that to himself again. This back and forth was perhaps the most impressive thing about N.H.K, because it didn't show Sato's journey out of hikikomori as something linear. He regressed more than he progressed, but seeing this struggle happen made me feel the weight of his decisions. Sato's reality is shaped by his consumption of escapist media, particularly hentai games, which distort his expectations of relationships and interactions with real people. These games feed into a male fantasy where women are portrayed as perfect and submissive, always meeting the desires of the player. In contrast, real relationships require effort, compromise, and growth. Love, Sato must learn, is not about fulfilling one's every wish without challenge. Instead, it involves mutual understanding, overcoming flaws, and weathering life's ups and downs together. While games simulate an idealized version of relationships, they cannot replace the complex emotional connections found in reality. One of the core struggles Sato faces is his unwillingness to accept that he needs to change. Deep down, he knows that his lifestyle is unhealthy, but he has become so accustomed to it that he feels trapped, unable to break free. His fear of failure paralyzes him, and he develops a victim mentality, believing that the world is conspiring against him. This notion of a grand conspiracy is a coping mechanism, allowing him to avoid taking responsibility for his life and choices. The reality Sato faces, however, is not that the world is against him, but that he has lost touch with what it means to live a fulfilling, meaningful life. The freedom he clings to, the freedom to stay inside, avoid people, and indulge in mindless entertainment, has left him enslaved to his own fears and insecurities. True freedom, as philosophers like Aristotle and Plato argue, is the ability to do what is good, not just what feels good in the moment. As the story progresses, Sato is forced to confront the consequences of his lifestyle. His neighbor, Yamazaki, who has his own struggles with isolation, serves as a mirror to Sato's life. The two have been living next to each other for years, yet Sato was too afraid to even realize it. This illustrates the extent of his detachment from the world. Eventually, Sato begins to understand that breaking free from his self-imposed prison requires effort, discomfort, and the willingness to face his fears head-on. Love, as the story suggests, is not a simple feeling or a fleeting emotion. It is a choice. It involves the risk of betrayal, disappointment, and heartache. But it is precisely because love is imperfect and filled with challenges that it holds so much power. In real relationships, both people must actively choose each other, despite their flaws and the possibility of failure. In contrast, the simulated relationships that Sato escapes into are devoid of this dynamic. They offer comfort without challenge, pleasure without growth. As Sato slowly comes to terms with his reality, he realizes that his only chance at happiness is to leave behind his old ways of thinking and living. The process of breaking free from his addiction to comfort and escapism is compared to the physical pain of starting to exercise. Initially, it's difficult and unpleasant, but the long-term benefits, strength, confidence, and well-being, far outweigh the temporary discomfort. In the end, the story emphasizes that life is not about avoiding suffering or hardship. Instead, true fulfillment comes from facing challenges, working through them, and growing as a result. Sato's journey shows that while change is hard and may come with setbacks, it is essential for personal growth and happiness. He learns that relying solely on escapism to avoid life's difficulties leads to stagnation, while embracing the real world, with all its messiness and imperfection, opens the door to genuine connection, purpose, and fulfillment. The story leaves readers with a powerful message. It's not enough to simply think about change or read about it. True transformation comes from action. Whether it's breaking free from addiction, overcoming social anxiety, or pursuing meaningful relationships, real progress requires effort and the willingness to step outside of one's comfort zone. Sato's journey, though filled with pain and discomfort, ultimately leads him to a place of hope, where he can begin to rebuild his life on more solid, meaningful ground. In the world of One Piece, the characters introduced in different arcs inevitably find something in Monkey D. Luffy that goes beyond his physical strength or actions. Despite knowing him for a short time, they are often willing to put their trust in him and even bet their lives on him. The reason for this unwavering trust is simple, but carries many complex layers. At the core of it all, Luffy is someone who inspires. But what exactly does he inspire? And why do people so quickly place their faith in him? To understand this, we must first look at Luffy's origin of inspiration. Shanks. Without Shanks, there would be no Straw Hat Luffy, and without the Straw Hats, there would never be Pirate King Luffy. Shanks, though appearing infrequently in the story, plays a pivotal role in shaping Luffy's understanding of what it means to be a pirate. His lessons to Luffy aren't delivered through grand speeches, but rather through actions, teaching Luffy what true strength and conviction look like. In the first chapter of One Piece, Shanks demonstrates to Luffy how a pirate should behave. He allows himself to be humiliated by mountain bandits, not out of cowardice, but because the fight isn't worth it. Shanks only retaliates when something he truly cares about, Luffy's life, is threatened. This moment defines how Luffy approaches conflict. He does not seek unnecessary fights, but when someone precious to him is at risk, he does not hesitate to act. Luffy mirrors Shanks' philosophy throughout the series, often choosing not to fight when provoked, but always stepping in to protect his crew and friends. This relaxed approach to leadership is one of the key reasons why people, even those who just meet Luffy, are drawn to him. He doesn't enforce his will on others but leads through inspiration and example. His crew, the Straw Hat Pirates, join him not because of any coercion, but because they see something in him that resonates deeply with their own goals and values. Luffy inspires freedom, something every individual in the One Piece world craves, whether they know it or not. A great example of this dynamic is seen in Luffy's interaction with Robin, where he declares war on the world to protect her from being captured by the world government. This act goes beyond just protecting a friend. It's a direct challenge to the oppressive forces that rob people of their freedom. Luffy's actions here are not just about his dream of becoming the Pirate King, but about ensuring that his crew's dreams remain within reach. Each member of the Straw Hats has their own cherished ambitions, and Luffy fights for them as fiercely as he fights for his own. The theme of influential parental figures extends across all the Straw Hats. Chopper learned love and kindness from Dr. Hiraluk, Sanji found his passion for cooking through his mother, and each of the Straw Hats carries lessons from their past that shape who they are. Luffy's lessons from Shanks, of freedom, strength, and conviction, become the cornerstone of how he leads. The Straw Hat itself, a memento from Shanks, is not just a physical object, but a symbol of the promise Luffy made to carry on these values and one day surpass his mentor. One of the most significant turning points in the series comes during the Subaru Archipelago arc when Luffy punches Saint Charlos, a celestial dragon. This moment highlights a critical flaw in Luffy's character, his impulsiveness. While he acts out of anger and a sense of justice, he fails to consider the larger consequences, leading to the crew's first major defeat. This failure teaches Luffy an important lesson about the weight of leadership and the importance of strength, not just physical strength, but emotional and strategic strength as well. Luffy's growth as a captain stems from understanding that his actions have profound impacts on his crew and their collective mission. As the series progresses, Luffy continues to take on more significant challenges, not just for his own sake, but for the sake of his crew and those he meets along the way. His role as a beacon of hope becomes even more apparent in arcs like Dressrosa, where Luffy battles Doflamingo, a former celestial dragon who has oppressed an entire kingdom. In this battle, Luffy isn't just fighting for himself, he's fighting for the people of Dressrosa and their freedom. His actions inspire not only his crew, but also the citizens of the island, who rally behind him, believing in his ability to bring about change. The battle against Doflamingo encapsulates the essence of Luffy's role in One Piece. Luffy doesn't act out of a desire for power or dominance. His motivation is freedom, for himself, for his crew, and for the world. His simple, childlike love for adventure and freedom contrasts sharply with the dark, complex world of One Piece, filled with corruption, prejudice, and oppression. Yet despite these overwhelming forces, Luffy's simplicity often breaks through and overcomes the darkness. In the grander scheme of the One Piece world, Luffy stands as the natural enemy to the oppressive powers that seek to control everything. The world government, particularly the celestial dragons and their secret ruler, represents the ultimate force of oppression, while Luffy, as a D, represents the force of liberation. This conflict prepares Luffy for his unavoidable battle with the rulers of the world, where he will finally become the Pirate King, the freest man on the sea. Luffy's journey isn't just about personal strength, it's about the strength of those around him. His greatest ability is not his combat prowess, but his capacity to inspire others to follow him, to trust him, and to fight alongside him. As seen in Dressrosa and many other arcs, people who barely know Luffy are willing to risk their lives for him because they recognize that he is someone worth betting on. He doesn't just fight for himself, he fights for the dreams and freedoms of everyone he encounters. In conclusion, Monkey D. Luffy is more than just the main character of One Piece. He is a symbol of freedom, hope, and inspiration. His ability to inspire trust and loyalty in others, even in the face of overwhelming odds, is what makes him a natural leader. Throughout his journey, Luffy learns and grows, not only as a pirate, but as a person, embodying the lessons passed down to him by Shanks. His simplicity and unwavering belief in freedom set him apart in a world filled with complexity and darkness, making him a character that others, both within the story and the readers themselves, can't help but believe in. When I first watched Naruto, I struggled to find any reasons to like Sasuke. He came off as cold, arrogant, and narcissistic, with a superiority complex that somehow coexisted with an inferiority complex. His obsession with revenge drove him to ruthlessly eliminate anyone who stood in his way. For a long time, I didn't like Sasuke, but then I realized that I never really tried to understand him, who he is, and why he made the choices he did. My hope is that by creating this video, I'll come to understand Sasuke and his actions a little better, and if you're in the same boat, I hope it helps you too. To truly grasp who Sasuke is, we'll need to start from his early years in the Naruto series, move through Shippuden, and finally examine who he's become as an adult in Boruto. Let's dive in and figure out who Sasuke really is. As a child, Sasuke was a cheerful kid who idolized his older brother and wanted to impress his father. But everything changed when Itachi slaughtered the entire Uchiha clan, including their parents, leaving Sasuke alone with the directive to gain power and seek revenge. This trauma transformed Sasuke from a happy child into a lost and depressed one, a change that, in hindsight, explains so much about his later behavior. Sasuke became a self-imposed loner, convinced that no one could understand the pain and suffering he endured. Despite his popularity, he never cared about it. The Uchiha massacre not only fueled his obsession with revenge but also made him distrustful of others. His brother, whom he once admired, had committed an act of ultimate betrayal, embedding deep trust issues in Sasuke's heart. A few years after the massacre, Sasuke graduated from the Ninja Academy. He was assigned to Team 7 with Naruto and Sakura, under the leadership of Kakashi. Over time, Sasuke began to form bonds with his teammates, and for a while, it seemed like he was growing and becoming a team player. But if you've watched Naruto, you know there's still a lot more to his story. During this time, Sasuke and Naruto's rivalry grew stronger. Naruto, who had previously been seen as a dead last, began to improve, driven by the support of those who believed in him. Sasuke, on the other hand, continued to train relentlessly, but when he saw Naruto surpassing him, he became increasingly disillusioned. Sasuke failed to realize that the bonds he rejected were what made Naruto stronger, while he saw them as weaknesses. Their rivalry was rooted in two contrasting dynamics: loner versus bonds, and talent versus effort. While Sasuke relied heavily on his natural talent, Naruto's strength came from his tireless effort and determination. Throughout Part 1 and beyond, Sasuke's struggle with power and his obsession with being the strongest led him down a dark path. When Sasuke realized there was a gap between him and Naruto, and after another devastating encounter with his brother, he became desperate for power. This desperation led him to Orochimaru, a decision akin to following a shady character down a dark alley. Sasuke didn't care about the risks. He just wanted to become powerful enough to defeat Naruto and Itachi. After deciding to leave the village, Sasuke and Naruto had one final confrontation. Their conflicting beliefs came to a head, resulting in an intense battle. Sasuke ultimately chose to walk his own path, refusing to kill Naruto, but not ready to return to the village either. During the 3-year time skip between Naruto and Shippuden, Sasuke trained to surpass Itachi. By the midpoint of Shippuden, Sasuke finally confronted his brother in one of the most epic battles of the series. Despite winning, Sasuke's victory was hollow. Itachi was already weakened by illness and ready to die. Sasuke's arrogance grew, and this overconfidence would come back to haunt him. After Itachi's death, Sasuke learned the truth about his brother's actions from Tobi. Itachi had actually been a hero who slaughtered the Uchiha clan to prevent an uprising and save the village. This revelation shattered Sasuke's world, and he redirected his hatred toward the leaders of the Leaf Village, vowing to destroy them. Joining the Akatsuki, Sasuke's next mission was to capture Killer Bee, the Eight-Tails Jinchuriki. However, he severely underestimated Bee and barely survived the encounter. After this reality check, Sasuke became even more unhinged, attempting to kill the Kage and later confronting Danzo, whom he defeated at great cost. At this point, Sasuke was consumed by his desire for vengeance, blinded by hatred and narcissism. But a reunion with his brother's reanimated corpse began to change him. Itachi's words made Sasuke question his path, and after learning more about the history of the village, he decided to become Hokage, believing he could change the system from within. However, his methods were extreme. He wanted to take power by force, a stark contrast to Naruto's belief that the Hokage should be someone who is acknowledged by the people. Sasuke's obsession with control and his willingness to do whatever it took to achieve his goals made him unfit for leadership. After the defeat of Kaguya, Sasuke attempted to seize power using the tailed beasts, leading to a final showdown with Naruto. Despite everything, Naruto never gave up on Sasuke, even when Sasuke was determined to kill him. Their final battle was a clash of ideologies: Naruto's belief in working together to improve the village versus Sasuke's belief that it needed to be destroyed and rebuilt from scratch. In the end, Sasuke realized he had lost. Despite all his power, he couldn't defeat Naruto or sever the bond between them. Naruto's unyielding faith in their friendship ultimately brought Sasuke back from the brink. Sasuke accepted Naruto's offer of redemption, deciding to spend the rest of his life atoning for his sins. His journey in Shippuden was tumultuous, marked by confusion, anger, and growth. he struggled to find his own identity while grappling with the lies surrounding his clan. By the time Boruto begins, Sasuke has spent years traveling the world, working to make amends for his past. Though his demeanor remains cold, he's no longer the vengeful loner he once was. In Boruto, Sasuke's bond with Naruto has grown stronger, and he now acts for the village and his loved ones. While he still has room to grow, especially as a father, he's become a better person and has earned back much of the respect he lost. Sasuke's character arc is one of redemption. We see him fall to his lowest point, but we also see him rise again, learning the value of bonds and the worth of human life. He finds new meaning beyond revenge and becomes a classic example of someone who grows up, realizes their past mistakes, and chooses to atone for them.
Throughout the ages, humanity has pondered profound questions about our lives, yet one of the most significant ones remains: am I truly fulfilled? In her book, The Power of Meaning, Emily Esfahani Smith proposes that genuine happiness and fulfillment can be attained by aligning our lives with what she refers to as the 4 pillars: belonging, purpose, storytelling, and transcendence. In this essay, I will explore these pillars in the context of the beloved anime series Naruto, demonstrating how the characters within the narrative provide insight into Naruto Uzumaki's journey towards a meaningful and impactful existence. Naruto Uzumaki, the titular character, is initially introduced as an orphaned child, bearing the burden of his status as the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. His early life is characterized by negative attention. Subjected to ostracism, neglect, and scorn, he struggles with an overwhelming desire for acknowledgement and companionship. Over time, however, the companionship of figures such as Iruka, Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke becomes a lifeline that nurtures his growth and leads him to his ultimate dream of becoming Hokage, the leader of the Hidden Leaf Village. Naruto's journey is filled with diverse experiences that shape his character, suffering and overcoming hardships, while extracting invaluable lessons from those around him. Esfahani Smith's 4 pillars, belonging, purpose, storytelling, and transcendence, are prevalent throughout the Naruto series, particularly through the relationships and trials that define Naruto's development. To commence our exploration, we look at the pillar of belonging, which emphasizes the importance of being accepted for who we truly are. Throughout Naruto's tumultuous journey, a plethora of characters embody this principle. Iruka acts as a paternal figure, fiercely believing in Naruto's potential. Kakashi serves as a respected mentor with a deep understanding of Naruto's struggles. Sasuke, Naruto's rival and friend, ultimately becomes a vital figure in his quest for connection. However, among these relationships, Gaara's role stands out as a particularly poignant representation of belonging. Gaara, once an antagonist, serves as a mirror to Naruto. Both characters share a painful history as Jinchuriki, children of trauma and isolation. However, unlike Naruto, whose determination and friendships lift him from despair, Gaara initially succumbs to his loneliness and hatred. Their fated clash catalyzes a vital transformation in Gaara, leading him to find acceptance in the hidden sand village. In witnessing Gaara's growth into the Kazekage, a leader embraced by his people, Naruto learns the value of belonging and the importance of rooting oneself in community rather than in isolation. Moving to the next pillar, storytelling. This concept involves the narratives we construct about our lives. It implores individuals to derive meaning from their experiences and craft a coherent identity. Since childhood, Jiraiya, Naruto's mentor, serves as an exemplary figure of storytelling. Once a boy struggling to find his place, Jiraiya learns to embrace his destiny and becomes a legendary ninja, all while writing his tales. Through his mentorship, Jiraiya teaches Naruto to carve his path rather than follow in the footsteps of others. Jiraiya's influence instills in Naruto the belief that he, too, can mold his future and echo the legacies of those who came before him, including Minato, his father, the fourth Hokage. As we delve into the Pillar of Purpose, we observe that it revolves around the impact we have on others' lives. The character Itachi Uchiha embodies this, illustrating the depth and sacrifice inherent in true purpose. Initially depicted as a villain, Itachi's story gradually unfolds, revealing the painful truth. He murdered his own clan to protect his younger brother, Sasuke, and uphold the fragile peace of the Hidden Leaf village. Itachi's complex motivations emphasize the profound love he holds for Sasuke and the tremendous weight of his decisions. It was his will to protect his brother, even at the cost of his own life and reputation, that marks the heart of his purpose. Ultimately, Itachi's sacrifice influences Naruto profoundly. He gains insight into the importance of protecting loved ones while recognizing the burdens of leadership and the necessity of relying on others. Lastly, we consider the pillar of transcendence, defined by an ability to move beyond oneself and consider the broader human experience. In the character of Nagato, Pain, we find a poignant exploration of this principle. As a construct of pain and loss from the harsh realities of war, Nagato's philosophy of shared suffering drives him to pursue peace through an unconventional and destructive means. His encounters with Naruto provide a critical learning moment. During their discussions, Naruto is challenged to recognize the broader dimensions of suffering that extend beyond his own experience. Through their exchanges, Naruto confronts the notion that true peace cannot stem from mere retribution or retaliation. Instead, he realizes that understanding and compassion are vital. Even in facing someone who embodies the darkness he wishes to eradicate, Naruto chooses forgiveness as a means of paving a new way forward, striving to sever the cycle of suffering rather than perpetuate it. In conclusion, Naruto serves as a rich tapestry illustrating the intricate web of relationships and experiences that define belonging, purpose, storytelling, and transcendence. The pillars outlined by Emily Esfahani Smith provide a profound lens through which to comprehend Naruto's journey, underscoring how the characters surrounding him not only shape his identity, but also instill in him a deeper understanding of life's meaning. As we reflect on our own lives, we can draw inspiration from Naruto's story, recognizing that it is through our connections, sacrifices, and narratives that we ultimately forge a meaningful existence. If one were to distill the essence of Naruto into a single theme, it could be said to embody empathy in the face of despair. The true victories over characters like Zabuza, Obito, and Pain arise not from raw strength, but rather through meaningful dialogue and understanding, often referred to as talk no jutsu. This is one of the many reasons for the admiration of Tsunade. She epitomizes trust and loyalty in her relationships. Tsunade evolves from a disillusioned war veteran known as the legendary Sucker to the position of Hokage, showcasing a profound trust in Naruto that is both moving and well-crafted in the story. There is a lot of criticism directed at Tsunade, mainly due to her not fighting Pain, leading some to view her as weak. Not true at all. Others find her physical confrontations with Jiraiya bothersome, but let's be honest, he usually deserves it. There are also concerns about the frequent jokes about her chest, which I can understand. However, my critique of Tsunade diverges from these points. To quickly recap her story, Tsunade is the granddaughter of the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, and a student of the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. Alongside Jiraiya and Orochimaru, she formed the legendary Sannin, renowned for their prowess on the battlefield. After the deaths of her boyfriend Dan and her brother Nawaki, both aspiring Hokage, she became embittered by the shinobi world, leading to struggles with alcoholism and gambling. It isn't until Naruto and Jiraiya encourage her to fulfill Dan and Nawaki's dreams that she decides to become Hokage. Her unwavering support for Naruto shines through and showcases her best moments in the series. She deeply trusts in her allies. It's one of her best characteristics, perhaps only surpassed by her strength and passion. However, there's a troubling aspect. Her actions often revolve around serving others. She lacks personal ambitions. Her goals often seem secondary to those of men in her life, including Dan, Nawaki, and Naruto. Even when she takes bold actions, like defying the village elders or fighting against Madara, it's typically in defense of Naruto. While she is undeniably powerful, capable of incredible feats like splitting the ground with her finger or utilizing methodic regeneration, her character often gets overshadowed by her connections to others. Too many female characters in shonen anime suffer from a lack of depth or motivations outside of their male counterparts. Tsunade does have her moments of impactful autonomy, like her campaign for medical ninjutsu to be included in every shinobi team after the Second Shinobi World War, a practice that revolutionized the battlefield. However, this significant contribution often takes a back seat in the narrative. It is a little funny that the Leaf Village selected an alcoholic gambler as the fifth Hokage, when there are numerous qualities beyond sheer strength that are vital for leadership, qualities that Tsunade certainly embodies. Yet, we don't get to witness her promote medical ninjutsu or assert herself as a leader. In comparison to her peers, Tsunade appears comparatively passive. Jiraiya roams the world, seeking to break cycles of hatred, and Orochimaru pursues immortality with fervor, while Tsunade seems to exist primarily to fulfill her loved one's dreams. I wish her ambition could have taken center stage instead of being tied to Dan and Nawaki, allowing her to serve as a strong female character with her unique goals. What if Tsunade had aspired to be Hokage while Dan and Nawaki supported her? This shift could have added an intriguing layer to her character. It would have been compelling to witness her struggle against her disillusionment with the role and see her triumph with Naruto's encouragement. Ultimately, Tsunade is a really cool character, but within the broader narrative, she seems to lack her personal ambitions, especially when compared to her male counterparts. Wake up to reality. Nothing ever goes as planned in this accursed world. The longer you live, the more you will realize that the only things that truly exist in this reality are merely pain, suffering, and futility. Listen, everywhere you look in this world, wherever there is light, there will always be shadows to be found as well. As long as there is a concept of victors, the vanquished will also exist. The selfish intent of wanting to preserve peace initiates wars, and hatred is born in order to protect love. There are nexuses, causal relationships that cannot be separated. I want to sever the fate of this world, a world of only victors, a world of only peace, a world of only love. I will create such a world. I am the ghost of the Uchiha, for truly this reality is a hell. When a man discovers the capacity to love, he also accepts the possibility of experiencing hate. From the moment the statue of Hoshirama and Madara was unveiled at the waterfall, it became evident that Madara, whoever he was, held a unique significance for us as an audience. His name ignited curiosity and questions, a name we were destined to remember. Before diving into the main narrative, let's revisit the introduction of the self-proclaimed savior of the shinobi world. Notably, the time between Madara's initial mention and his eventual appearance spanned over 300 episodes. During this long anticipation, his name was frequently mentioned, but when the true Madara finally emerged, it was a moment of triumph. He embodied overwhelming presence and confidence, effortlessly dispatching the allied shinobi forces. His mastery of the Sharingan, which evolved into the Rinnegan in real time, starkly contrasted the abilities of an ordinary shinobi versus a godlike figure. When Madara summoned meteors and reversed the Edo Tensei technique, it was clear he had a meticulously crafted mission that began in his youth. Madara was born into the Warring States period, an era characterized by relentless conflict, with life expectancy around 30 years. During this tumultuous time, the two most powerful clans, the Uchiha and the Senju, were in constant battle. In his youth, he forged a brief friendship with Hashirama Senju, only to fall victim to the feud between their clans. Their friendship was swiftly overshadowed by the mutual destruction wrought by their families, culminating in the tragic death of Madara's brother at the hands of Tobirama Senju. In a desperate bid for peace, Hashirama offered his life to save Madara, a sacrifice intended to quell the ongoing turmoil impacting their clans and the surrounding nations. Both Madara and Hashirama aspired to achieve peace since their early days, yet their friendship was considered forbidden. The Uchiha and Senju appeared incapable of coexistence, as each side had suffered devastating losses, particularly among the innocent children caught in their conflicts. Madara began his life with a loving family, only to see it reduced to just himself and Hashirama, who suffered a similar fate. The Uchiha were known for their emotional nature, with deep loyalty to family. However, Madara struggled to trust other villages and was drawn to the idea of subjugating the neighboring nations. In contrast, Hashirama pursued peace through cooperation and mutual trust. Madara, feeling isolated, sought to enhance his abilities, leading him to pursue the Sharingan's most advanced form. In that pursuit, he delved into the legacy of the Shinobi and the seemingly unbreakable cycle of conflict between the Uchiha and Senju. The ancient stone tablet warned him of a future filled with suffering, pushing him to confront Hashirama. Their conflict ended with Madara's defeat and death at the hands of his former friend. However, Madara was a visionary, awakening the Rinnegan through a fragment of Hashirama's flesh. He hatched a plan known as the Eye of the Moon, or Infinite Tsukuyomi. As time passed and his own body aged, he sought the assistance of the young Obito Uchiha, a boy shaped by despair and tragedy. Madara revitalized Obito and manipulated him into fulfilling his eternal dream, leveraging the boy's pain stemming from the loss of Rin at the hands of Kakashi. Madara's hardened personality and ideology were largely sculpted by the brutal circumstances surrounding his childhood, where conflict was commonplace. In his later years, he found solace in battle, revealing a growing affinity for combat. The Uchiha were recognized for their strength, and Madara learned to respect only those who could match his power. His rivalry with Hashirama became a defining aspect of his existence, and their competitive spirit drove him to master a vast array of jutsu. Despite his incredible power, the loneliness that enveloped Madara led him to lose faith in humanity. He grappled with the notion that Hashirama's vision of peace was a failure, a hopeless realization that stemmed from his self-imposed isolation from both his clan and Hashirama. While Hashirama was a wellspring of hope, Madara became fixated on the futility of striving for a brighter future. Ultimately, Madara became consumed by the desire to impose his view of peace through authoritarian control, birthing his Eye of the Moon plan, an elaborate scheme to cast the world into an eternal dream. His assertions of unifying the world, free from hatred and war, posed a stark contrast to the vibrant essence of humanity, where free will and the capacity to grow and evolve were fundamental. Gaara aptly characterized Madara's fabricated peace as one born from illusion, a peace devoid of the burdens and responsibilities of real choices. True peace, he argued, could only be achieved through genuine effort and choices made freely, much like how Hashirama once chose to end the bloodshed between the Uchiha and Senju. As fate would have it, Madara fell victim to manipulation by Black Zetsu, who ultimately killed him to resurrect Kaguya Otsutsuki. One of Madara's most poignant moments arrived just before his demise, as he lay alongside Hashirama, confronted by the clash of their distinct ideologies, the will of fire versus the eternal dream. This moment underscored Madara's isolation and the consequences of his relentless pursuit of a misguided vision. In summary, Madara Uchiha was a complex character shaped by war and loss, a man who longed for peace but became ensnared in loneliness and despair. Although he believed his relentless quest for power would lead to a better world, his actions brought about unimaginable strife. Ironically, the very war he waged became the catalyst for uniting the nations, ultimately achieving the peace he sought, but with a fundamentally different approach. In the end, Madara could not trust or accept the world as it was. He was a tragic figure who sought an unreachable dream and lost sight of the humanity around him. Superheroes have always captured our hearts, embodying ideals that reflect the potential for human greatness. Touted across various media, these larger-than-life characters are often portrayed with a blend of extraordinary powers and saintly virtues, such as love, sacrifice, service, resilience, and a dedication to world peace. However, a recurring issue within these narratives is that mental health challenges, emotional trauma, and personal struggles of superheroes are either non-existent or merely scratched at the surface. Interestingly, even after 100 years of superhero tales, these familiar themes persist, with characters rarely diverging from the traditional tropes. This predictability has left many audiences yearning for innovation and depth in superhero stories. Amid the genre's saturation and repetition, a notable exception emerges: One Punch Man. This unique anime distinguishes itself through its unconventional protagonist, Saitama, who grapples with relatable modern issues such as depression and existential crises, all while wielding immense strength. In a landscape filled with formulaic narratives, this departure from the norm is gaining traction and reshaping the discourse within the genre. One Punch Man not only entertains with its absurdity, but also cleverly critiques contemporary society through its humor and character dynamics. Saitama is a fascinating figure, characterized by his lack of traditional backstory and an enigmatic psychology. Initially depicted as an everyday individual burdened by the monotony of life, Saitama's journey begins with that familiar feeling of rejection, a catalyst for transformation. The absurdity of his first adversary, a humanoid crab named Crablante, reflects the show's overall tone. Humor intertwined with serious themes. This ridiculous setting serves a greater purpose, highlighting the often unseen struggles of modern existence. Upon saving a victim from Crablante, Saitama exhibits noble characteristics that align with superhero ideals. Yet these moments are presented in a manner that emphasizes his realistic flaws and emotions. This layering of comedy with deeper societal commentary allows One Punch Man to resonate more profoundly with viewers, as Saitama's struggles echo the experiences of many living with the anxieties and pressures of contemporary life. Instead of aspiring to heroism out of altruism, Saitama's motivation is refreshingly mundane. He seeks enjoyment in his role as a hero. His journey to become One Punch Man involves grueling training and personal sacrifice. However, his ultimate triumph opens the door to new challenges, namely confusion and ennui. Once he reaches unmatched power, Saitama finds himself in an existential crisis, where the thrill that once spurred him to train disappears. Saitama's experience encapsulates a broader commentary on the modern working class. Like many who toil in white-collar jobs, he becomes trapped in a cycle of monotony, an existence devoid of challenges or growth. This poignant reflection highlights how, despite our achievements, life can still feel unfulfilling when excitement evaporates. The narrative is not merely about Saitama's personal struggles. It draws parallels to the universal human experience of finding purpose in an increasingly predictable world. The interactions he has with both heroes and villains underscore this reality. Even Krablante, a character seemingly devoid of depth, embodies the idea that ennui has become a shared human experience, which transcends the traditional hero-villain dynamic. This layered storytelling invites viewers to recognize their struggles through humor, thereby making a profound statement about societal issues. Saitama exists in the interstice between idealism and realism. He displays noble traits, such as risking his life for others, yet he also embodies the relatable nature of an average individual. His evolution from a mundane existence to a superhuman challenge seeker allows audiences to engage with his character on multiple levels. Conversations with other heroes challenge him to reevaluate his self-perception and potential, suggesting that growth is a continual journey rather than a final destination. The vision the show paints of Saitama is complex and flexible, filled with potential for development, both as a hero and as an individual. As the narrative progresses, his relationships with others hint at the possibility of reclaiming his purpose, transforming him into a character who may very well redefine what it means to be a hero. In summary, Saitama's portrayal in One Punch Man represents a significant evolution in superhero narratives, bridging the gap between traditional heroism and the relatable struggles of modern society. His journey reflects our own battles with meaning and purpose, highlighting the experiences of many. From the very beginning, Attack on Titan quickly immerses its viewers in the poignant themes of oppression and war, moving seamlessly to explore the tragic realities of child soldiers, the complexities of perspective, and the self-perpetuating nature of conflict, viewed as a necessity by all parties involved. The narrative delves into how history, folklore, and culture have been manipulated to uphold these dynamics, among other profound insights. The series meticulously dissects the various elements and themes surrounding this grim conflict. While the story certainly sheds light on the horrifying aspects of war through the diverse perspectives of its characters, the ultimate message is less explicit. What is the solution to all of this? Is a solution even possible? At the heart of the narrative lies a poignant and brief scene showcasing two characters who, tragically, will not live long enough to see if the ideas exchanged between them could ever truly be realized. However, within the context of the story, the sentiment behind their words holds greater significance than their potential outcomes. Kenny and Yuri are extremely different individuals, existing on opposite ends of the ideological spectrum, influenced by their distinct personalities, backgrounds, and motives. The circumstances would typically set them on a path toward conflict, leading Kenny to believe their dynamic could only result in violence. Yet, through Uri's display of humility and empathy, an unexpected friendship blossoms. Reflecting on their connection, Yuri contemplates the impending conflict, envisioning the inevitable pain and suffering that looms over them. Despite the gravity of the situation, he chooses to focus on something that transcends the violence, the bond they have formed. Uri wonders what it was that allowed them to rise above the expectation of conflict and instead foster peace. The answer, not hatred or aggression, but connection, understanding, empathy, and love. While violence is an inescapable reality in this world, much like Erwin's assertion that war will persist as long as humanity exists, what allowed Yuri and Kenny to connect as friends amidst their deep-seated conflicts was that profound human bond. Similarly, if the characters are to discover a means of halting this catastrophic cycle, it will likely involve employing the same principles of connection and understanding. The stunning new conclusion presented in Part 2 of the final season emphasizes this theme. The imagery of Aaron's scarf, representing his affection for Mikasa, transforms into a bird soaring into the open sky, symbolizing the freedom he has long sought but never quite grasped. This visual metaphor implies that perhaps the constraints faced by the characters can be overcome, not through the same violence that has yielded no resolution over generations, but through love, understanding, and human connection. Kenny later muses about what inspired Yuri's optimistic perspective, questioning how he could see the horizon as a genuine opportunity rather than another mirage. Uri's hope for a future resolution mirrors the very qualities that brought them together despite the conflict. While it may seem that halting this cyclical struggle and achieving genuine peace requires a miracle, it is important to recognize that miracles, however rare, do occur. Thus, maintaining belief in their possibility is worthwhile. Amidst this historical turmoil, the choice to embrace mutual understanding and connection over hate is nothing short of miraculous. In a world so fraught with darkness, clinging to hope and recognizing the potential for goodness within humanity can be incredibly challenging. Yet there is immense value in striving toward that miracle. As long as hope exists, the dreams of prosperity and peace remain alive. Is it naive to aspire for such outcomes? Maybe so. It's possible that a definitive solution eludes us. However, as long as a glimmer of hope remains, and as long as individuals like Kenny and Yuri can find unexpected solace in one another, these small miracles serve as reminders that, alongside humanity's capacity for darkness, there exists an equally profound potential for light, compassion, and goodness. This delicate balance may unlock the path to true paradise, genuine peace, and freedom. As long as this duality persists, the unlikely pursuit of this dream remains undeniably worthwhile. While violence is undoubtedly one of Attack on Titan's harsh truths, another, perhaps the most vital, is that humanity can transcend violence through love.